The lighthouse at Hollow Point. The sea was in one of its quieter moods when the supply boat pushed away from the mainland and began the short, steady journey toward Hollow Point. The winter sun hung low, pale and tired, casting a soft wash of gold over the water. It was the kind of light that didn't seem to warm anything, more like the memory of warmth than the thing itself. The man at the wheel, Harold Trenner, knew this route better than most. He'd been making the trip to Hollow Point Lighthouse for almost a decade, bringing food, oil, mail, and the occasional newspaper to the keepers who worked there. In all that time, he'd come to think of the lighthouse as a stubborn sentinel, the last thing between the rough Atlantic and the jagged coast. It wasn't a large structure, not like the grand whitewashed towers you saw in photographs. This one was built of stone the colour of ash, short and broad-shouldered, clinging to the black rock like it had been born there. From a distance, it looked more like a watchman's post than a beacon of light. Harold had heard all the old stories about the place. Most people who lived along this stretch of coast had. The first keeper, back in the 1800s, was said to have vanished one February without a word, his boots still by the door, his logbook mid-sentence. Another was found dead in the lantern room one morning, his eyes fixed on the horizon, as if he'd seen something out there no one else could. Fishermen, on fog-heavy nights, spoke of seeing shapes near the rocks, too big to be birds, too slow to be fish. Some swore they'd heard voices on the wind, speaking in a tongue no one recognized. But Harold didn't put much stock in that. Stories like those tended to grow on lonely coastlines the way moss grew on stone. Still, there was something about the place. Even on a calm day of making him feel as though he were being watched in return. By the time the boat reached the dock, the tide was coming in, hissing and lapping against the old wooden posts. Harold tied the lines and glanced up toward the keeper's house, which sat just below the base of the lighthouse. Usually, by now, one of the keepers would have appeared at the door, raising a hand in greeting. But the door remained shut. He climbed the worn path, his boots crunching over grit and salt. The air smelled of kelp and something else, something faint, metallic. The closer he came to the door, the more he noticed the silence. No gulls called, no wind rattled the shutters. It was the kind of stillness that made the hair rise on the back of his neck. He knocked. No answer. Inside, the air was cool, and the familiar scent of oil lamps and old wood lingered. On the table, a kettle sat half full, the tea inside cold. A chair had been pushed back slightly, as though someone had just stood up. There were 3 keepers stationed here: Samuel Wicks, the senior, Thomas Hale, barely 24, and Robert Gaines, quiet and dependable. Harold called each of their names as he moved from room to room, but the building was empty. Boots by the door, coats on their hooks. The logbook open on the desk, the last entry only a day old. Sea calm, lantern lit. Strange noise from North Rocks last night. Will investigate at low tide. Harold felt a shiver, but it wasn't from the cold. He stepped outside again, scanning the path that wound down toward the jagged north side of the island. The rocks there were darker than the rest, slick with algae and forever slicked by the sea spray. Even from this distance, Harold could hear the muted thud of waves striking them. It was the kind of place you didn't wander to without reason. The light atop the tower still turned, slow and deliberate, casting its beam over the empty water. That meant the mechanism was working, either set to run by one of the keepers before they left, or simply left to its own devices. But where they had gone and why was the question that now lodged itself firmly in Harold's mind. He started down the narrow track toward the North Rocks. His boots slipped more than once on the damp earth, and by the time he reached the shoreline the tide was climbing, its foam curling over his toes. The air was sharper here, the wind carrying a faint tang of rot, like old seaweed left too long in the sun. Harold scanned the rocks. In the shallow pools between them, small crabs scuttled, and limpets clung stubbornly to the stone. At first there was nothing unusual, but then he saw it. A deep groove in the rock, as if something had been dragged across it toward the water. The stone around the groove was smooth and dark, slick with something that wasn't entirely seawater. He crouched, touching the edge of the mark. It was cold. Too cold, even for the sea. A faint sound rose over the waves, not the cry of a gull or the whistle of wind, but something lower, almost like a hum. It pulsed, faint but steady, seeming to come from somewhere beneath the water itself. Harold stood slowly. The tide had already swallowed the lower rocks, and with it, whatever might have explained the strange groove. By the time he returned to the keeper's house, the sun had dropped lower, and a pale grey was spreading across the horizon. The lantern above shone brighter now, casting a soft glow on the surrounding rocks. Inside, he checked the logbook again. The handwriting was firm, no sign of hurry or distress. The strange noise mentioned, was this hum? He'd just heard the same thing? He knew he couldn't leave the island without reporting what he'd found. But the mainland was over an hour away by boat, and the thought of leaving the lighthouse completely unattended sat heavy in his chest. That night, Harold stayed in the small guest bunk near the base of the tower. Sleep came only in brief stretches, broken by the soft creak of the building settling and the endless whisper of the wind. More than once he thought he heard footsteps outside, slow, deliberate. But when he opened the door, there was nothing there but the sea and the turning light. In the early hours, just before dawn, Harold woke to a faint tapping. It was coming from somewhere high above, near the lantern room. He climbed the winding iron staircase, the metal cold beneath his hands. When he reached the top, the lantern turned steadily, its beam sweeping over an empty horizon. Yet, on the outer glass, near the eastern pane, was something that made his breath catch. A mark, drawn in what looked like salt residue. It was a circle. Inside the circle, 3 smaller circles arranged in a triangle. Harold had never seen it before. And as the first thin line of daylight touched the sea, the low hum returned, this time louder, rising like something just beneath the surface, waiting. Harold stepped out onto the narrow balcony encircling the lantern room, the wind pressing against him with a steady, cold force. The mark on the glass was still visible, faint in the growing daylight, but undeniable. He reached out and brushed it lightly with his fingertips. The residue felt gritty, like fine sand, yet it clung to the glass even under the damp air. He looked out toward the eastern horizon. The water was strangely still for this time of morning, the usual rolling swells reduced to a slow, glassy rise and fall. The hum seemed to be coming from that direction, as if the sea itself were holding its breath. He scanned the water for any sign of a vessel. Nothing. No fishing boats, no distant steamers. Only the endless expanse of grey-blue, stretching to where the sky merged with it in a soft, uncertain line. The strange groove on the rocks, the empty rooms, the mark on the glass, each detail pressed on him like the weight of an unfinished sentence. By midday, Harold forced himself back to the keeper's house to search again, this time with a more deliberate eye. He checked under the bunks, inside storage trunks, even in the pantry, where sacks of flour and tins of preserved fruit sat untouched. Everything was in order. No signs of struggle, no hasty departure. Then he noticed the desk drawer in the small office was locked. The key wasn't in the usual spot under the inkwell. After searching the shelves, Harold spotted a small brass key wedged behind a loose plank near the floor. It fit the lock perfectly. Inside the drawer was a single leather-bound journal. It wasn't the standard logbook. This was smaller, more personal. The first pages were filled with neat, careful entries about daily life on the island, weather notes, small repairs, rare visits from supply boats. But as Harold turned the pages, the writing shifted. The tone became strained, the lines shorter, the handwriting less steady. The hum again last night, closer this time. Edmund says it's the wind through the rocks, but it lasts too long. Saw the shape in the water, not a boat. Then, the final entry. If it comes tonight, we will not stay. The date was 2 days before Harold's arrival. He sat back in the chair, the leather creaking under him. The words repeated in his mind, we will not stay. Where had they gone? As night fell for the second time, Harold lit the lantern in the tower himself, the mechanism ticking softly as it turned. He stood at the base of the tower, watching the beams sweep the horizon, feeling the deep quiet settle in. The hum began again. This time it was unmistakably nearer. The sound was no longer a faint background note. It was a presence, deep and resonant, as though the stone beneath the lighthouse were carrying the vibration straight into Harold's bones. He climbed the spiral staircase again, his lantern throwing restless shadows against the curved walls. Each step seemed to thrum faintly underfoot, the hum rising with him. At the top, the lantern glass reflected his pale face, eyes drawn immediately to the eastern window where the strange mark had been. It was still there, but now it glistened faintly, as if fresh moisture clung to it. Harold stepped onto the balcony. The wind had died to a near whisper, the night air strangely heavy. The sea stretched black and unbroken, the horizon erased by the darkness. Yet somewhere out there, in the vast expanse, the hum pulsed like a heartbeat. He gripped the cold railing. "Who's there?" he called into the night, his voice smaller than he intended. The sound barely carried before the sea swallowed it. The hum deepened. And then he saw it, not in the beam of the lighthouse, but in the sliver of darkness just beyond. A shape, large, motionless, half submerged. The water around it was unnaturally still, as though the tides had been suspended in its presence. He could make out no details, just the sense of enormity, of something that should not be so close without sound or movement. His first instinct was to run to the signal horn, but as he stepped back inside, the hum shifted, becoming a series of low, drawn-out tones. They were spaced apart in a way that made Harold's skin crawl. Deliberate, patterned, almost like communication. He descended the stairs quickly, nearly tripping over the last step, and moved to the office where the small radio sat. He tried to send a message to the mainland, but only static answered. Not the usual hiss, but a low crackle that seemed to pulse in time with the hum outside. Hours passed like that, him seated at the desk, the hum never ceasing, the shape never leaving its place in the water. When the first light of dawn broke, the shape was gone. The sea returned to its restless state, waves slapping at the rocks as if nothing had been there at all. Harold stepped outside to breathe the morning air. That was when he saw it. On the lower steps of the tower, etched into the stone, was the same circle and triangle mark from the lantern glass. But this time it was carved deep, as though by something with incredible force, and the grooves were still wet with seawater. Harold crouched to examine the carving. The seawater pooled in its grooves was cold, far colder than the morning air, and the edges of the mark were sharp, unweathered. Whatever had made it had been here only hours earlier, maybe minutes. He touched the water again. It left a faint, salty residue on his fingertips. The smell was strange, not the usual briny scent of the sea, but sharper, metallic. Straightening, he scanned the shoreline. No footprints, no sign of anyone climbing the rocks, just the slow, methodical slap of waves against the base of the lighthouse. Back inside, he opened the journal once more, flipping through the final pages as though some new detail might appear if he read them enough times. One line caught his attention, one he hadn't lingered on before. It's not the water we fear. It's what waits when the tide goes out. The tide. Harold stepped outside again, moving down the narrow path to the far side of the island. The tide was at its lowest, revealing stretches of slick, dark rock. Out beyond the usual reach of the waves, strange grooves had been carved into the stone, long sweeping arcs that curved inward, meeting at the center in points like talons. They were too large, too deliberate to be the work of erosion. And they were deep. Kneeling, Harold traced one with his hand, feeling the way the groove seemed to guide his fingers toward the center. The rock was warm here, faintly vibrating, like the hum had seeped into it and stayed. Then he noticed something else. A small object lodged in a crevice nearby. He worked it loose and turned it over in his palm. It was a button, brass and tarnished, with the initials EC engraved on its face. Edmund Coyle, one of the keepers listed in the logbook. The button was streaked with the same gritty residue from the lantern glass. That night, Harold decided he would not sleep. He kept the lantern lit, its steady rotation casting slow sweeps of light over the island. He sat in the tower, the journal open beside him, the button in his pocket. The hum returned just after midnight, louder now, vibrating through the glass panes, and once more the shape appeared beyond the edge of the light. But this time it was closer. The lantern's beam caught the faint outline of something breaking the surface. Not metal, not wood, but something that seemed to shift and ripple like the water itself, yet retained its form. Harold gripped the railing, every instinct telling him to retreat, but he couldn't look away. The tones returned, deliberate and slow, echoing off the water. Somewhere deep inside, he felt the meaning was just beyond reach, as if he were listening to a language older than the lighthouse, older than the island itself. And then the tones stopped. From the base of the tower came 3 heavy knocks. The knocks were deliberate. Even through the thick stone walls, Harold could feel the vibration from each strike travel up through the tower floor. He forced himself to move, lantern in hand, descending the spiral staircase slowly, his footsteps muffled by the sound of his own pulse in his ears. When he reached the bottom, he stood for a moment with his hand on the door latch, listening. Silence. The wind outside had died completely, leaving the night unnervingly still. He opened the door a fraction and peered out. The pale beam from the tower's lanterns swept across the rocks, briefly illuminating the waves, and there, on the stone at the base of the steps, was a wet outline. Not a footprint. Not exactly. It was rounded at the front, narrowing toward the back, with strange angular points that extended outward, as if something with too many joints had pressed itself flat against the surface. It glistened in the rotating light, a thin trickle of seawater dripping from the grooves. He stepped outside fully, the cold air biting at his face. Whatever had made the shape was gone, but his eyes followed a trail of wet prints leading away from the door, winding down toward the tide pools. The hum began again, low at first, then rising in intensity, each pulse rolling through him like a distant wave. Harold followed. At the tide's edge, the prints vanished into the water. The shape was back, closer still, as if it had drifted toward shore. In the faint light, Harold thought he saw movement beneath the surface, a shifting pattern that made his eyes water to look at directly. The hum cut off. In the stillness that followed, a single word, or something like it, surfaced in his mind, unspoken yet perfectly clear. Wait. He stumbled back, the slick rock almost sending him into the tide pool behind. When he blinked, the shape was gone. The sea returned to its restless churn as though nothing had ever been there. Back inside the lighthouse, he sat at the desk, hands trembling. The journal lay open, the button beside it. Without quite realizing it, he began to write. Not his own thoughts, but words that seemed to move through him from elsewhere. He didn't remember falling asleep. When he woke, the journal was closed, the button gone. The lantern still burned, casting its steady glow over the empty desk. Harold searched the entire lighthouse, but the button was never found. Nor was Harold after that night. The next relief crew arrived 2 weeks later to find the tower empty, the logbook closed on the final page. It waits. Shadows of Truth, True Horror Story No. 1, The Silent Village, soft calm tone. There is a quiet corner of the world, tucked away beneath endless skies and rolling hills, where time seems to move differently. A place where the wind whispers secrets through the trees, and the sun sets slowly, casting long shadows that stretch like silent watchers over the land. It is here that our story begins. In the early 1900s, a small village lay nestled in a remote valley, far from bustling towns and city lights. This village was known simply as Ravenswood. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, where doors were left unlocked, and where the day's rhythm was set by the rising and setting sun. But one autumn, as the leaves turned golden and the air grew crisp, something changed. One by one, the villagers began to disappear. Pause for effect. At first, it was a single farmer who did not return from his fields, then a young woman who was seen last walking toward the nearby woods, never to come back. Slowly, the population dwindled until the village was almost silent, except for the wind and the distant call of a lone crow. What happened in Ravenswood? Why did this once thriving community vanish without a trace? The official records tell only part of the story, fragments of letters, whispered rumors, and a few faded photographs. As we explore the shadows of Ravenswood, we will uncover the strange events that led to its silence. We will walk the empty streets, listen to the echoes of the past, and consider the possibilities that linger long after the last light fades. So, settle in now, find a comfortable place to rest, and let the story unfold slowly as the night deepens and the world outside grows quiet. In Ravenswood, the days before the disappearances were ordinary, at least on the surface. The villagers tended to their crops, mended their homes, and shared stories by the fireside as twilight fell. The air smelled of damp earth and wood smoke, and the gentle clatter of tools was a familiar comfort. Among the villagers was a man named Thomas Gray, the local blacksmith. Thomas was known for his steady hands and quiet demeanor. He had lived all his life in Ravenswood, watching seasons pass like chapters in a book. To him, the world was predictable, until that autumn. One morning, Thomas noticed something odd. The morning fog, usually light and fleeting, lingered thick and heavy over the valley. The birds were silent, and even the forest seemed still. As he stepped outside, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. He set about his work, hammering and shaping metal, but the unease grew. Tools he left by the forge would be missing when he returned. Strange footprints appeared near his workshop, deep, irregular, and unlike any animal tracks he had seen. Thomas mentioned these signs to his neighbors, but most shrugged them off as tricks of the mind or the work of wandering animals. Yet, unease spread quietly among the villagers, like a shadow creeping across the land. Days passed, and the disappearances began. The first was old Mr. Harris, the farmer. One morning, his fields lay untouched, his tools abandoned, but no sign of him. The search parties found no trace, only the soft imprint of footprints leading into the woods, then fading. The second was Emily, a young woman who often walked alone near the river. She was seen last at dusk, heading toward the trees, her figure swallowed by the growing darkness. By then, fear had settled over Ravenswood, but the villagers clung to hope. They searched tirelessly, calling names into the forest, but the woods swallowed their voices. One night, Thomas heard a faint tapping at his window. He opened it to find a small, folded note tied with a thin piece of twine. The handwriting was shaky but clear. They come when the fog stays too long. Beware the silence. Thomas held the note tightly, the chill deepening in his bones. What did it mean? And who had left it? As the fog thickened and the nights grew colder, Ravenswood's silence became its most haunting presence. Windows remained dark. Doors creaked open to empty rooms. The village seemed frozen in time, waiting for a secret too heavy to tell. As days slipped into weeks, the fog refused to lift. It clung to the trees and draped over the hills like a heavy, damp blanket. The sun's warmth felt distant, barely touching the earth below. Thomas Gray, now one of the few remaining villagers, found himself wandering the empty streets with a quiet, sinking feeling. The village well, once the centre of daily life and conversation, was eerily still. No one came to draw water, and the stone edges were slick with moss and moisture. Thomas often paused there, staring into its dark depths as if searching for answers in the cool, shadowed water. One afternoon, while making his way to the blacksmith's forge, Thomas noticed fresh footprints again. These were different from before. They were smaller, lighter, and circled the centre of the village before disappearing near the old chapel on the hill. The chapel had been abandoned for years, ever since the new church was built at the valley's edge. Few dared to go near it. Its wooden doors sagged on their hinges, and the stained glass windows were cracked and grimy. Yet now it seemed to beckon Thomas silently, as if holding a secret that refused to be forgotten. That evening, wrapped in a thick cloak against the creeping cold, Thomas decided to investigate. His footsteps echoed softly on the overgrown path leading to the chapel, and the air was thick with the scent of damp leaves and decaying wood. Inside, the chapel was cloaked in darkness, broken only by slivers of fading light filtering through the cracked windows. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, settling on worn pews and shattered relics. The silence was absolute, save for the faint drip of water somewhere deep within the building. As Thomas moved further inside, his eyes adjusted to the gloom. Near the altar, he found something unexpected. A circle of small stones arranged carefully on the floor, surrounding a faded piece of parchment. Gently, he picked up the parchment, feeling its brittle edges crumble slightly in his hands. The writing was old, faded, and almost illegible, but a few words stood out clearly. "The silence is the price. Watch the woods. The watchers do not sleep." A shiver ran down Thomas's spine, but he could not tear his eyes away. Who were the watchers? And what price had the village paid? He left the chapel that night with the note tucked safely in his pocket, but sleep eluded him. Outside his window the fog pressed close, and in the distance a faint tapping sound echoed, a soft, rhythmic pattern, like a heartbeat against the stillness. Thomas knew that Ravenswood's mystery was far from over. The village had fallen silent for reasons that no one fully understood, and the watchers in the woods remained unseen but ever present. Days merged into nights with little distinction. The fog had become a permanent veil over Ravenswood, and Thomas Gray's days were filled with quiet unease. He kept the parchment from the chapel close, its cryptic words lingering in his thoughts like a soft echo. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Thomas decided to visit the edge of the forest where the strange footprints had first appeared. The trees stood tall and still, their bare branches scratching against the grey sky. The forest floor was carpeted with fallen leaves that muffled his footsteps. Thomas walked slowly, listening to the faint rustle of wind weaving through the branches. The air was cool and damp, carrying the subtle scent of pine and earth. As he ventured deeper, the silence grew thicker, almost tangible. Halfway through the woods, Thomas noticed something strange. Small, neatly stacked piles of stones placed carefully at the base of several trees. Each pile seemed deliberate, as if marking a path or a warning. He paused, running his fingers over the cool stones, feeling the rough texture. Suddenly, a low sound broke the stillness, a soft tapping, like nails gently drumming on hollow wood. Thomas froze. The sound seemed to come from all around, echoing between the trees. He strained his ears, but the forest held its secrets tightly. Slowly, Thomas turned toward the sound, his heart steady but cautious. Through the mist, he saw a figure, dim and indistinct, standing just beyond a cluster of birch trees. The figure did not move, only watched. Thomas blinked, and the figure was gone. He stood there for a long moment, the forest holding its breath. Then, quietly, he made his way back toward the village, the soft crunch of leaves beneath his boots the only sound breaking the silence. Back in Ravenswood, Thomas found the streets emptier than ever. Windows were shuttered and doors closed tight. The air felt heavier, as if the village itself was holding its secrets close. That night, Thomas sat by his hearth, the flickering flames casting long shadows on the walls. He unfolded the parchment again, tracing the faded words. "The silence is the price. Watch the woods. The watchers do not sleep." What watchers? And why was silence the price? As he pondered, the tapping returned, so faint he almost thought he imagined it. But it grew steady, rhythmic, like a pulse in the night. Thomas closed his eyes, letting the sound lull him towards sleep. Outside, the fog curled around the village like a living thing, and the watchers waited patiently in the shadows. The following morning, a cold stillness hung over Ravenswood, heavier than the day before. Thomas awoke with a lingering sense of urgency he couldn't quite place. After a simple breakfast, he wrapped himself in his coat and made his way toward the village centre, compelled to investigate further. The once familiar paths now seemed strange, distorted under the persistent grey fog that blurred the edges of everything. As he walked past the empty houses, Thomas noticed small details he had missed before. A door left slightly ajar, a child's shoe abandoned by the roadside, a garden overrun with weeds. He paused by the old well once more, peering into its dark depths. The water reflected the dull light above, still and unbroken. He felt as if the well was watching him back. A soft rustling drew his attention. Turning slowly, Thomas spotted a small figure near the edge of the village, the outline of a child, perhaps no older than 7 or 8. The figure stood perfectly still, staring toward the woods. "Hello," Thomas called softly, stepping closer. The figure did not move or respond. As Thomas approached, the child's features became clearer, pale skin, wide eyes reflecting the dim light, and an expression that was unsettlingly calm. Suddenly the figure turned and vanished into the mist as silently as it had appeared. Thomas stood rooted, heart pounding softly in his chest. Was this a real child, or something else that lingered in the fog? Determined to understand, Thomas followed the fading footprints left by the child, leading him deeper into the forest. The trees towered overhead, their bare branches like skeletal hands against the grey sky. The tapping sound returned, soft and steady, guiding him further into the shadows. At last, Thomas came upon a small clearing bathed in muted light. In its centre lay a simple stone marker, worn smooth by time. Surrounding the marker were dozens of small stones, carefully arranged in concentric circles. Thomas knelt beside the marker and brushed away the leaves covering an inscription. Though faint, he made out the words, "To those who listen in silence, the watchers reveal their truth." A sudden chill swept over the clearing, and Thomas felt eyes upon him, watchers hidden just beyond the trees, waiting in patient silence. He rose slowly and turned back toward the village, the weight of the mystery settling deeper in his mind. Days turned into weeks, and Ravenswood remained a ghostly shadow of the village it once was. Thomas Gray found himself walking the quiet streets more often, drawn by a need to understand the silence that had settled over his home. The fog still clung thickly to the valley, a constant companion that blurred the edges of reality. One evening, as twilight softened the world into muted colours, Thomas sat by the hearth in his modest home. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the air was filled with the faint scent of burning wood and old earth. He unfolded the parchment from the chapel once more, reading the cryptic words aloud in a low, steady voice. "The silence is the price. Watch the woods. The watchers do not sleep." He pondered the meaning of the watchers. Were they people, spirits, or something else entirely? As the fire crackled softly, a gentle tapping began at his window, the same rhythmic sound that had haunted his nights. Thomas rose slowly, opening the window to the cool night air. Outside, the fog curled like smoke, and for a moment he thought he saw faint shapes moving just beyond the edge of the garden. His breath caught as the tapping paused, then resumed, steady and calm, like a heartbeat in the stillness. Thomas closed the window, his mind racing yet his body calm. The watchers were close. Their presence was a reminder that some secrets were guarded fiercely, and that the silence of Ravenswood was no accident. In the days that followed, Thomas became the village's lone keeper of its story. He documented what he had seen and heard, hoping that someday someone might unravel the mystery of the silent village. Ravenswood was never found again by outsiders. Maps removed it and whispers replaced its name. Yet the story lived on, in letters, in old photographs, and in the quiet corners of history where shadows linger. Perhaps the watchers still wait in the woods, guarding their secret with patience and silence. And if you listen carefully when the fog rolls in and the world grows quiet, you might hear the soft tapping, the heartbeat of Ravenswood's secret, echoing through the silence. Shadows of Truth, true horror story number 2. The vanishing of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers. There are places in the world where isolation reaches its deepest extremes, where the sea crashes endlessly against jagged cliffs and the wind carries stories across empty horizons. The Flannan Isles, a small group of rocky islands off the coast of Scotland, is one such place. In December of 1900, a mysterious event unfolded here that still puzzles historians and ghost hunters alike. The complete disappearance of 3 lighthouse keepers without a trace. Imagine the cold, biting wind whipping through the air as waves relentlessly batter the cliffs below. The lighthouse, a solitary beacon in the vast grey ocean, stood silent when a relief crew arrived to find no sign of the men who should have been tending its light. How did 3 experienced men vanish from such a remote post? What secrets lie hidden in the crashing waves and storm-lashed rocks? Tonight, we will step slowly into this mystery, tracing the final days of the keepers, exploring the island's rugged beauty and deadly dangers, and pondering the unanswered questions that have haunted the Flannan Isles for over a century. So settle comfortably as the ocean's hush envelops us and the story begins. The Flannan Isles lighthouse stood perched atop the tallest cliff, a steadfast sentinel against the relentless North Atlantic. It had been built just a few years before, in 1899, to guide ships safely through the treacherous waters. The 3 men who kept the light burning were Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur, each experienced and respected in their roles. Their duties were demanding, maintaining the light, weather monitoring, and ensuring the safety of passing vessels. But above all, they were used to solitude and the wildness of the island. On December 15th, 1900, a relief vessel approached the island. The crew expected to find the lighthouse keepers well and ready to be relieved after their tour of duty. Instead, what they found was a scene steeped in mystery and silence. The lighthouse doors were securely locked from the inside. Inside, the beds were untouched. 3 mugs sat on a table, still containing the remains of the last drinks. Yet the men themselves were nowhere to be found. The relief crew searched the entire island, their footsteps crunching softly on the rocky ground, voices carried away by the biting wind. They scoured every corner, the lighthouse rooms, the surrounding cliffs, and the jagged shores where waves crashed relentlessly. Despite their efforts, no sign of Thomas, James, or Donald could be found. Their belongings lay untouched, personal items neatly arranged as if they had vanished mid-task. The logbook inside the lighthouse, carefully maintained by the keepers, offered only cryptic clues. The final entries revealed nothing unusual until December 15th, the day the relief ship arrived. On that day, the logs noted a severe storm approaching, with waves described as mountainous, battering the island fiercely. One entry mentioned a mysterious accident, a fractured lamp and a broken gaslight that needed repair. Could this storm have caused their disappearance? Perhaps a rogue wave swept the men off the cliffs or into the turbulent sea. Yet no bodies washed ashore, No debris found to mark their final moments. Rumors spread quickly. Some whispered of supernatural forces, angry spirits guarding the island. Others speculated about a secret tragedy concealed by the government or the lighthouse authorities. But the official inquiry concluded only that the men were likely lost in an accident caused by the storm. Still, the unanswered questions remain. What really happened on the Flannan Isles that December night? How did 3 strong, capable men vanish without a trace in such a small, confined place? As the cold wind whistles through the cliffs and the ocean tides pull silently beneath the lighthouse, the mystery endures, waiting perhaps to be solved by those willing to listen to the silence. In the weeks that followed, the mystery of the vanished keepers stirred the imaginations of many. Newspaper articles speculated on wild theories, some suggesting that the men might have been swept away by a freak wave while attempting to secure equipment on the cliffs. Others wondered if the harsh isolation had taken a toll on their minds. Despite extensive searches, no evidence ever surfaced to explain their disappearance. The island remained as it had been, remote, rugged and silent, except for the ceaseless roar of the Atlantic. The Flannan Isles lighthouse continued to shine its light for decades afterward, a solitary beacon in the vast darkness. New keepers took their place, but the story of the 3 men who vanished without a trace lingered in the air like a quiet shadow. Some say that on stormy nights, if you listen carefully, you can hear faint tapping against the windows of the lighthouse, soft, rhythmic, like a ghostly heartbeat reminding the world of those lost souls. Others speak of a lingering presence on the island, a silent watcher who keeps vigil over the cliffs, forever waiting for the return of Thomas, James, and Donald. The mystery remains unsolved, a chilling reminder of the ocean's power and the fragile boundary between solitude and silence. As you rest now, imagine the cold wind sweeping over the cliffs, the lighthouse's beam cutting through the fog, and the unanswered questions echoing softly on the waves. As we leave the Flannan Isles behind, the lighthouse stands quiet once more, its light a steady glow against the darkening sky. The sea continues its endless rhythm, crashing, whispering, and keeping its secrets deep beneath the waves. The story of the vanished keepers is one of mystery and silence, where nature's power and the unknown intertwine. It reminds us that some places hold memories too deep to fully uncover, and that even in the brightest lights, shadows may linger. So as you settle in now, allow the steady pulse of the ocean to soothe you. Let the quiet mystery of the Flannan Isles carry you gently toward rest. And if ever you hear a soft tapping in the night, remember, it may be the distant echo of those lost souls, still watching, still waiting. Shadows of Truth. True horror story number 3, the Dyatlov Pass incident. In the heart of the Ural Mountains, where the landscape is carved by ancient glaciers and the air grows thin and cold, lies a place wrapped in snow and silence. It is a place where the wildness of nature reigns supreme, a realm of jagged peaks, frozen forests, and endless white. In the winter of 1959, 9 experienced hikers set out on a journey that would take them deep into this unforgiving wilderness. Led by Igor Dyatlov, the group was composed of young, skilled mountaineers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, eager to test themselves against the challenges of the winter mountains. Their goal was to reach Otorten, a mountain about 10 kilometers beyond a remote pass now known as Dyatlov Pass, named after their leader. The group was well prepared, equipped with winter gear, food supplies, and a solid plan. But what they encountered on that journey would become one of the most haunting mysteries of the 20th century. Days after the hikers were expected to return, search parties were sent into the mountains. What they found was disturbing and strange. The group's tent was discovered abandoned on the slopes, slashed open from the inside, as if the hikers had fled suddenly into the freezing cold. Further investigation revealed more unsettling details. The bodies of the hikers were found scattered in the snow, some without proper clothing, others with severe injuries that seemed impossible to explain by natural causes. One was missing her tongue, another had a fractured skull, and some bore bruises deep beneath the skin. The official inquiry struggled to explain the cause of death. The weather was harsh, temperatures well below freezing, but no avalanche or natural disaster could fully account for the injuries and the peculiar circumstances of their disappearance. Over the years, numerous theories have emerged. An avalanche, military tests, infrasound-induced panic, or even encounters with unknown forces. Yet none fully explain the strange details, the torn tent, the scattered belongings, the unexplained injuries. As we explore this mystery tonight, we will walk slowly through the events leading up to the expedition, the discoveries of the search teams, and the eerie, unanswered questions that have echoed through the mountains for decades. Let the cold, silent wilderness wrap around you as we step softly into the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident. The journey began in late January 1959. The 9 hikers, full of enthusiasm and confidence, departed from the town of Ivdel, their faces flushed with excitement despite the biting cold. They carried heavy backpacks filled with supplies, tents, food, clothing and equipment designed for the harsh winter ahead. The group was a close-knit team. Igor Dyatlov, their leader, was known for his determination and leadership skills. Others, like Yuri Doroshenko and Lyudmila Dubinina, were experienced and strong-willed. They had trained together and were well prepared for the challenge. For several days, the trek progressed without incident. The landscape was stunning but unforgiving. Endless snowfields, dense forests, and steep mountain slopes. The hikers set up camp each night, sharing stories and keeping spirits high despite the cold. Then, as they approached the pass, things began to change. On February 1st, the group made camp on the eastern slopes of Kholat Syakhl, a mountain whose name in the local Mansi language means Dead Mountain. This would be their last camp. The following day, something forced them to abandon their tent in haste. When rescuers arrived weeks later, they found the tent slashed open from the inside. Footprints leading away from the shelter into the snow, some barefoot or wearing only socks. It was as if the hikers fled from something terrifying, leaving behind their belongings and even their shoes in the freezing cold. The search parties who found the tent were met with a chilling scene. The slashed fabric flapped weakly in the cold wind, a stark contrast to the snow-covered ground that stretched endlessly around it. The footprints in the snow told a story of confusion and desperation, some trailing away in socks or bare feet. Others vanished into the wilderness, never to be seen again. Searchers followed these tracks for hours before coming across the first bodies. The first 2 hikers were found some distance from the campfire, one near a small pine tree, the other by a rocky outcrop. Both were inadequately dressed for the freezing temperatures, yet their bodies showed no signs of struggle or injury. It seemed they had succumbed to hypothermia, the cruel chill of the mountain claiming them quietly. As searches continued, more bodies were discovered, spread out across the slope in varying states and positions. Some were partially clothed, others were fully dressed, yet with severe and puzzling injuries. One was missing her tongue, another suffered fractured ribs and a skull fracture, injuries inconsistent with typical accidents. Adding to the mystery, some of the bodies showed no external wounds, yet X-rays later revealed massive internal trauma, similar to that which might be caused by a car crash. Investigators found no evidence of an animal attack, and the area showed no signs of an avalanche large enough to cause such devastation. What could have frightened these skilled hikers into fleeing their shelter in the dead of night, barefoot into freezing snow? And what had caused the severe injuries on some of them? The official investigation into the Dyatlov Pass incident found no conclusive answers. The weather conditions were harsh. with temperatures plunging well below freezing and strong winds whipping through the mountains. Yet the injuries and circumstances did not fully align with natural causes like hypothermia or an avalanche. Rescue teams examined the tent carefully. The slashing from the inside suggested panic or extreme urgency, as if the hikers were fleeing a sudden and unknown threat. Their footprints showed signs of disorientation, some stumbling barefoot, others in socks, moving away from the tent in no clear direction. The searchers scoured the surrounding area for clues. They found no evidence of wildlife attacks, and the hikers' belongings remained largely untouched, except for the tent and the clothing left behind. What perplexed many was the severity of the injuries. 2 hikers had fractured skulls and broken ribs, wounds so severe they resembled the aftermath of a high-impact collision. Another was missing her tongue, and several had unexplained bruising deep beneath the skin. The mystery deepened when investigators noted that some of the hikers' clothing showed signs of radiation, an odd detail that only added to the enigma. Over the decades, countless theories emerged. Some suggested an avalanche forced the hikers to flee, though no avalanche debris was found. Others posited secret military tests or missile strikes nearby, potentially frightening the hikers. There were even suggestions of infrasound from wind creating panic attacks among the group. Yet, none of these theories fully explained the unusual injuries or the sudden flight from the tent. Among the many theories proposed, one suggested that the hikers might have been caught in a katabatic wind, a sudden, powerful gust of cold air rushing down the mountain slopes. Such winds can be strong enough to knock people off their feet and cause panic, forcing them to flee their shelter into the night. Another idea was that the group experienced what is known as infrasound-induced panic. Infrasound are low-frequency sound waves, sometimes produced by wind passing over mountain ridges, which can cause feelings of unease, fear, and confusion in humans, enough to trigger a flight response. Some speculated about secret military activity nearby, as the area was known to be used for missile testing during the Cold War era. Perhaps an unexpected explosion or sonic boom startled the hikers, leading to their disorganized escape. There were even suggestions that wild animals could have been involved, though the lack of bite marks or evidence of struggle made this unlikely. Despite all the speculation, none of these theories fully explained the strange injuries, the deep internal trauma, the missing tongue, or the unusual bruising. The hiker's disappearance remains a puzzle wrapped in the cold silence of the mountains, where nature's harsh beauty meets the unknown. As the years passed, the Dyatlov Pass incident continued to haunt those who heard its story. The mountains remained silent, guarding their secrets beneath the snow and ice. Despite advances in technology and renewed investigations, many questions remain unanswered. What truly frightened those 9 hikers into fleeing their tent in the dead of night? What caused the strange, severe injuries that confounded medical experts? Was it nature's fury, human error, or something still beyond our understanding? The Ural Mountains are a place of breathtaking beauty and quiet danger. They remind us of how small and vulnerable we are when faced with the wild forces of the earth. So now, as you settle into rest, imagine the cold wind brushing over snowy peaks, the soft crunch of footsteps fading into the distance, and the stillness that follows after the storm. May the mystery of Dyatlov Pass drift gently into your dreams, a quiet story of the unknown, unfolding slowly in the shadows of the mountains. Shadows of Truth, True Horror Story number 4, The Hinterkaifeck Murders. Nestled deep in the Bavarian countryside, the Hinterkaifeck farmstead stood alone amid snow-covered fields and dark, whispering forests. It was a quiet place where the rhythm of life followed the seasons, planting, harvesting, tending animals, and waiting for winter's thaw. The year was 1922, a time when news travelled slowly and communities were close-knit but isolated. The Gruber family lived at Hinterkaifeck, a small household composed of Andreas Gruber, a widower and farmer, his wife, Cecilia, their widowed daughter, Victoria Gabriel, and Victoria's two children, Cecilia and Joseph. Though simple, their life was hard, shaped by the unforgiving land and the long shadows of winter. In the weeks leading up to the tragedy, strange occurrences began to unsettle the family. Neighbours and villagers spoke in hushed tones about footsteps found in the snow leading up to the farmstead, but no one was seen approaching. The family reported hearing noises in the attic, soft scraping sounds like someone moving unseen above their heads. Andreas Gruber himself mentioned feeling watched, a presence lingering just beyond the edge of the trees. Farm tools were found misplaced, keys went missing, and the family felt as if someone was living with them, hidden in the shadows. Despite their unease, life went on, with no clear answers. Then one cold March day, the horror was revealed. When the family failed to attend church or visit neighbours, concern grew. Authorities came to the farm and found a scene that would haunt the region for decades. Inside the house, the bodies of the family members were discovered, each brutally murdered with a mattock, a heavy farming tool used to till the earth. Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, and the two children were found in the house and barn, some with injuries so severe they were unrecognizable. The farmstead, once a place of quiet labor and family life, had become a grim tableau of violence and silence. The investigation began immediately, but the mystery only deepened. No one was ever caught. No clear motive was found. The strange footprints in the snow, the noises in the attic, were they the work of the killer or something more unsettling? Some suspected a neighbor with a grudge. Others whispered of vengeful spirits haunting the farm. Theories ranged from robbery gone wrong to long-held secrets erupting into tragedy. The unanswered questions lingered. Why were the family warned by footsteps before the murders? How could someone live undetected in the house? And what dark secret did Hinterkaifeck hide? Today the farmstead no longer stands, but the story lives on, told quietly around firesides and in shadowed corners of history. It is a reminder of how close comfort and terror can lie, and how some mysteries never fully unfold. As you rest now, imagine the snow falling softly over empty fields, the faint echo of footsteps fading into the night, and the quiet whispers of a family lost to the silence. Shadows of Truth, True Horror Story number 5, The Ghosts of the SS Orang Medan. The vast Pacific Ocean is a place of endless horizons and deep, dark mysteries. Among the countless vessels that have sailed its waters, some stories remain etched in maritime lore, tales whispered in hushed voices among sailors and shrouded in silence and fear. One such story is that of the SS Orang Medan, a Dutch freighter whose name became synonymous with unexplained terror and ghostly silence. It was June of 1947 when the first distress signals were intercepted by nearby ships and shore stations. The messages were chilling, their words fragmented and desperate. The transmissions began calmly enough but quickly turned grim. SOS from Orang Medan, captain dead, officers dead, all crew dead. And then the final haunting words, I die. The radio went silent. In response, rescue ships immediately set course toward the coordinates relayed by the transmissions, hoping to find survivors. What they discovered would haunt maritime history forever. The Orang Medan was found adrift in calm seas, enveloped in a thick, heavy fog that muted the world around it. The ship was eerily still, a ghostly silhouette against the grey sky. On board, the rescuers found a scene frozen in time. The entire crew was dead, men sprawled across the decks, in the chart room and on the bridge. Their faces were pale and frozen in expressions of pure terror. Eyes wide open, mouths agape as if caught mid-scream, they seemed to be trapped in a moment of unimaginable horror. No visible wounds marred their bodies. No signs of struggle or violence. Just death, sudden and silent. As the rescue crew explored the ship, they detected a strange, metallic odor and felt an oppressive heaviness in the air. Some crew members fell ill, overcome by nausea and dizziness. Before the rescuers could tow the ship to safety, a sudden and unexplained fire broke out. Flames engulfed the Orang Medan rapidly, and the ship soon sank beneath the waves, disappearing into the depths, taking its secrets with it. What had caused the mysterious deaths? Some suggested a deadly gas leak, possibly from the ship's cargo. Others whispered of curses, paranormal forces, or encounters with the unknown that no living soul could explain. The story of the Orang Medan remains a chilling reminder of the sea's power and the mysteries that still dwell beneath its surface. Shadows of Truth. True horror story, the silent watchers of the moors. Beneath a muted sky, where soft clouds drift lazily across a pale horizon, lies an expanse of rolling moorland, wild, wind-swept and ancient. The air is cool and carries the faint scent of heather and damp earth, mingling with the distant call of a lone curlew. Here, in this quiet stretch of England's countryside, the land stretches endlessly, shifting gently beneath a pale sun that filters softly through mist. Time seems to slow in this place, where the rhythm of the natural world hums a gentle, steady song. It is in these moors, centuries ago, that a tale unfolded, one whispered from village to village, passing through generations, like a secret thread woven into the fabric of local life. The story begins in the early 1800s, in a small village nestled at the edge of the moors, where narrow lanes wound between stone cottages roofed with thatch. The villagers were hardy folk, accustomed to the quiet hardships of rural life, tending sheep and working the land under skies often heavy with grey. Among them was a family, the Harrows, who lived on a solitary farmstead surrounded by the heather and bracken. William Harrow was a man of steady hands and gentle eyes, his days spent caring for the fields and his flock. His wife, Mary, carried a calm strength, weaving wool by the hearth while their 2 children played quietly outside. For years, life passed much as it had for generations before, simple and serene, marked by the changing seasons and the steady cycle of sowing and harvest. Yet as autumn crept in one year, something began to shift. The village's livestock grew restless. Sheep would be found scattered, far from their pens, and dogs howled softly through the night. The moorland wind seemed to carry an unfamiliar chill, whispering through the gorse and birch trees. William himself noticed strange figures glimpsed just beyond the edge of the fields, shapes that vanished when approached, shadows that lingered at the periphery of vision. The villagers spoke quietly of the silent watchers, unseen eyes that roamed the moors under the veil of fog and twilight. No harm was ever done, but unease settled like dew. One evening, as dusk softened the sky to lavender and rose, William walked the edge of his fields, the soft crunch of peat beneath his boots blending with the faint rustle of grass. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of rain yet to fall. He paused, eyes scanning the distant horizon where the moor met the darkening sky. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then from the mist came a slow, deliberate tapping, a sound gentle and rhythmic, like a quiet heartbeat against the wooden gate. William's breath caught, but he felt no fear, only a calm curiosity. He stepped closer, the mist curling around him like a soft shawl. The tapping continued, steady and measured, echoing faintly through the growing twilight. As he reached the gate, the sound stopped. Silence returned, deep and complete. In the days that followed, the tapping was heard again, sometimes near the farmhouse, sometimes far across the moors. It became a part of the landscape, an unspoken presence felt rather than seen. The village elder, a woman named Agnes, spoke of ancient tales, stories of guardians who watched over the land, protectors who remained unseen but ever present. She told William that the moors held memories as deep as the roots of the oldest trees, and that sometimes, when the world is quiet enough, those memories reach out, like fingers brushing softly against the veil between then and now. And so, life continued, marked by the gentle rhythms of nature and the quiet companionship of the silent watchers. As winter crept in, the moors were blanketed in frost and snow, the world hushed beneath a thick quilt of white. The tapping faded with the season, but the presence remained, a steady pulse beneath the earth and sky. William and Mary watched their children grow, their lives woven into the endless tapestry of the moors. And though the silent watchers were never seen directly, their touch was felt, in the rustle of leaves, the hush of dawn, the soft sigh of the wind. As winter deepened, the moors transformed into a quiet white expanse. Frost coated the grasses like delicate crystals, and the early mornings shimmered with the soft glow of the pale sun struggling to rise through thick clouds. The villagers stayed close to their hearths, sharing warmth and stories as the long nights settled in. William found solace in these quiet days, tending to the firewood and mending tools, while Mary prepared hearty stews to chase away the chill. Their children, Emily and Thomas, would sit by the window watching the snowflakes dance down slowly, their faces pressed against the cold glass, eyes wide with wonder. The moors seemed almost alive beneath the snow, the shapes of ancient stones and hidden streams softened by winter's gentle hand. Though the tapping sound had grown faint with the frost, William sometimes caught a whisper of it in the wind, a soft rhythmic knocking that felt like a heartbeat beneath the silence. One evening, as twilight settled like a velvet curtain, William ventured outside, drawn by an inexplicable calm. The sky was a deep indigo, speckled with faint stars just beginning to shimmer. He walked slowly across the snow-covered fields, each step muffled by the thick blanket beneath. The air was crisp and pure, carrying the scent of pine and earth, and a distant owl called softly from the trees. Pausing at the edge of the moor, William felt the familiar presence, gentle, watchful, like a quiet guardian unseen but near. The tapping returned, faint but steady, a delicate rhythm echoing in the stillness. As he listened, his breath forming soft clouds in the cold air, he understood that some mysteries are not meant to be solved but to be felt, woven quietly into the fabric of the world. The seasons turned again, and with spring came the thaw. The moors awoke slowly, their green blades pushing through the melting snow, flowers blooming shyly beneath the warming sun. Life in the village resumed its gentle pace. William and Mary watched their children explore the fields, laughter carrying lightly on the breeze. And through it all, the silent watchers remained, a calm presence, part of the land's endless story. As spring's soft fingers coaxed life from the thawing earth, the moors blossomed in gentle hues of green and gold. Heather began to spread its tiny purple blooms, the scent mingling with the fresh, earthy aroma rising from the damp soil. The warm breeze carried the hum of bees and the faint rustling of newly awakened grasses. William's days became filled with the steady rhythm of tending the land, mending fences, guiding sheep through the pastures, and watching over the fields as the sun climbed higher. His hands, weathered but sure, moved with quiet purpose. Mary worked alongside him, her voice soft as she sang old folk songs passed down through generations. Emily and Thomas grew curious about the moors, their footsteps light and eager as they wandered through the thickening bracken. They listened intently to the village elder Agnes, who told stories of the land's long history, the ancient peoples who once walked these hills, the seasons turning as they always had, and the gentle spirits who watched over the moorland. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind distant hills, William sat outside his farmhouse, watching the sky shift from gold to soft pink, then deep indigo speckled with stars. The cool air was fragrant with the scent of blooming wildflowers, and a gentle breeze carried the distant song of a nightingale. In that stillness, a familiar sound returned, the soft, deliberate tapping, like a steady heartbeat echoing through the quiet. William closed his eyes, breathing deeply, feeling the land's pulse beneath him. It was a reminder, a quiet connection between the past and the present, the seen and the unseen. Though the villagers never saw the watchers, their presence was woven through the fabric of the moors, a silent comfort in the vast, wild landscape. As night fully embraced the land, the stars twinkled overhead like distant campfires, and the moors whispered their ancient secrets softly on the breeze. As the years passed, the village on the edge of the moors remained much the same, holding fast to its quiet rhythms and traditions. The Harrow family grew alongside the land, Emily blossoming into a thoughtful young woman, her eyes always tracing the patterns of clouds, while Thomas developed a keen curiosity for the stories woven into the soil beneath their feet. William and Mary, steadfast and kind, remained the heart of their homestead, tending the fields and animals with patient hands. Their lives were simple, but deeply connected, to the earth, the seasons, and the silent watchers whose presence seemed woven into the very air. One late summer evening, the villagers gathered in the small stone church that stood at the village's centre. The warm glow of candlelight flickered against the rough-hewn walls as Agnes, the elder, spoke softly of the moors and their mysteries. She told how the land was older than memory, shaped by winds and water, by countless lives lived and lost. That sometimes, in the quiet moments between dusk and dark, the watchers stirred. A gentle presence felt in the rustle of leaves, the sigh of the breeze, or the distant tapping that some still heard. The crowd listened in reverent silence, the words wrapping around them like a familiar lullaby. Back at the Harrow farm, William stood outside beneath the vast night sky, the stars shimmering with quiet brilliance. The tapping came again, faint and steady, a soft rhythm in the stillness, a reminder that some mysteries need no answers, only gentle respect. With a calm heart, William returned indoors, the warmth of the fire welcoming him home. Outside, the moors whispered their ancient song beneath the watchful stars, cradling the village in their timeless embrace. As autumn painted the moors in shades of amber and rust, the days grew shorter and the air carried a crispness that hinted at winter's approach. The fields were quiet once more, the harvest safely gathered, and the village settled into a calm routine beneath soft, grey skies. William sat by the window of the farmhouse, watching leaves drift lazily to the ground. The fire crackled softly, filling the room with a gentle warmth. Outside, the moors stretched endlessly, their soft contours melting into the mist. The tapping sound had all but faded with the seasons, yet William felt its presence linger, as a comforting heartbeat beneath the earth, a silent watchfulness that accompanied him through quiet days and restful nights. In the stillness of the fading year, he found peace in the knowledge that some mysteries are not to be feared but embraced, as part of the land's ancient story, whispered through the winds and woven into the very fabric of the world. And so, under the soft glow of twilight, the moors held their secrets close, a gentle reminder that the unseen watchers are always near, guarding the quiet beauty of the earth and guiding those who listen with open hearts. As you rest now, imagine the soft rustle of leaves, the cool breath of the wind, and the steady, calming rhythm of the silent watchers, watching, waiting, and whispering their timeless lullaby. Shadows of Truth, true horror story, the disappearance at Flannan Isles. The North Atlantic stretches vast and endless, a deep expanse of water that shifts with the slow rhythm of the tides and the quiet whispers of the wind. Far from the comforts of shore, a small cluster of rocky isles stands solitary against the endless horizon, the Flannan Isles. Known for their jagged cliffs and the wild call of seabirds, these islands have long been a beacon for sailors, their lone lighthouse a guardian against treacherous waters. It was the early winter of 1900, a time when the days were short, and the sea often carried a chill that seeped into bones. The Flannan Isles lighthouse, perched atop the highest cliff, was manned by 3 keepers, James Ducat, Thomas Marshall and Donald MacArthur. Men of sturdy build and quiet demeanour, they were accustomed to isolation and the demands of the relentless sea. The lighthouse was a small, whitewashed sentinel against the dark rock, a place of light and warmth amid the harsh elements. Inside, the keepers moved through their daily routines with practiced ease, tending the lamp, logging the weather, and maintaining the equipment that guided ships safely through the night. The weather at the Isles was often unforgiving. Gusts of wind that howled like ghosts, waves that crashed against the cliffs in thunderous applause, and mists that rolled in thick and heavy, blurring the line between sea and sky. Yet within the lighthouse there was a calm order, a routine that brought a measure of peace. One December morning, a passing ship approached the islands and noticed something unusual. The lighthouse was dark, no welcoming beam cutting through the grey fog. Concerned, the ship's captain reported this anomaly once ashore. An investigation was swiftly launched. When the relief crew arrived days later, what they found was a haunting mystery. The lighthouse was deserted. Inside, the keeper's belongings were untouched, meals left uneaten on the table. Logs were recorded up until the day of their disappearance, with no indication of distress. No footprints led away from the building, no signs of struggle or sudden flight. The men had vanished as if swallowed by the very mist that cloaked the islands. In the weeks and months that followed, many theories arose. Had they been swept away by a rogue wave, taken by some unseen force? Or had the isolation of the sea claimed their sanity, driving them to escape into the storm? Yet the mystery remained unsolved, a quiet whisper carried on the wind that bends over the cliffs of the Flannan Isles. The days leading up to the disappearance were marked by the usual rhythms of life on the Flannan Isles. James Ducat, the head keeper, was a man of steady habits and quiet resolve. His weathered face bore the marks of countless storms weathered and nights spent vigilant against the dark. Thomas Marshall and Donald MacArthur, his assistants, shared in the labour and companionship that the isolated post demanded. Each morning the men would wake to the cold embrace of the sea air, the distant crash of waves a constant reminder of their remoteness. Inside the lighthouse, warmth from the small stove battled the chill that seeped through stone walls and wooden floors. Their days were filled with tending the lamp, maintaining the lighthouse's mechanisms, and logging observations in thick, leather-bound books. The winter of 1900 was particularly harsh. Storms battered the cliffs, and the sea swelled with restless energy. Yet the men remained steadfast, carrying out their duties with quiet determination. On December 15th, the log entries tell of a clear but cold day. The sea was calm in the morning, the sun a pale orb behind wisps of cloud. The men noted the usual shipping traffic, the arrival of supply vessels distant on the horizon. That evening, as dusk settled and shadows lengthened over the rugged terrain, the keepers lit the lamp, a warm beacon reaching out into the gathering darkness. The light cut through the mist, a promise of safety for sailors braving the treacherous waters. But when the relief vessel arrived days later, the lighthouse was shrouded in an eerie silence. No smoke rose from the chimney, no footsteps marked the snow-dusted path. The door was securely fastened, yet inside, the absence of the men was palpable. The logbook lay open on the table, its last entry dated December 15th, with no hint of what had transpired afterward. Search parties combed the rocky shorelines and surrounding cliffs. They found no trace of the men, no footprints, no signs of struggle or departure. Some locals whispered of strange lights seen on the islands during the storm. Others spoke of unnatural fogs that disoriented even the hardiest of sailors. Despite the many theories, none offered a clear explanation. The Flannan Isles remain a place of quiet mystery, where the sea and sky meet in an endless dance, and the unanswered questions drift like mist across the rugged cliffs. In the days that followed the discovery of the empty lighthouse, the village of Stornoway on the Isle of Lewis became a quiet hub of whispered speculation. Families huddled near hearths, sharing tales of the keepers as if preserving their memory through the spoken word. For many, the mystery was less a chilling horror and more a solemn reminder of the sea's power and the fragile balance between man and nature. James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur had been more than just keepers of light. They were custodians of safety, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of the ocean and sky. Each man carried with him stories of distant lands and weathered storms, of moments when the beacon's glow had saved lives. James, the head keeper, was known for his quiet strength and thoughtful nature. He kept a small collection of books within the lighthouse, worn from years of use, and often read passages aloud in the evenings to stave off the loneliness. Thomas had a fondness for sketching, his notebooks filled with delicate renderings of seabirds and waves. Donald, the youngest, was a man of few words but steady hands, meticulous in his duties. Their isolation was both their burden and their solace. The relentless sea was a constant companion, its moods shifting like the turning of a great wheel. Storms could rage for days, trapping the men within their stone sanctuary. Yet in moments of calm, the islands offered breathtaking beauty, the golden light of dawn spilling over the cliffs, the gentle lapping of waves against hidden coves, and the haunting calls of seabirds circling overhead. The weather logs reveal the delicate dance of wind and tide that December. On the 14th, a storm had rolled in, fierce and sudden, battering the island's rocky shores with relentless waves. The men secured the lighthouse as best they could, their practiced hands steady despite the tempest's fury. By the morning of the 15th, the storm had passed, leaving behind a veil of mist that clung to the cliffs like a shroud. It was on this day that the last entries were made in the logbook, calm and routine despite the recent storm. Some have speculated that the storm, or something born of it, might have claimed the men. Yet the lack of any physical evidence, a single footprint, a discarded tool, makes such a fate difficult to accept. Others have pondered if the isolation had taken a toll on their minds, leading them to wander into the mist, lost and silent. But whatever the truth, it remains hidden beneath the whispering winds and rolling waves. As the night deepens and the soft murmur of the sea continues, imagine standing on those cliffs yourself, feeling the spray of salt air, hearing the distant cry of gulls, and sensing the timeless mystery held in that quiet, lonely place. Isolation is a silent companion on the Flannan Isles, as unyielding as the stone cliffs that rise sharply from the restless sea. For the men who tended the lighthouse, days could stretch into weeks without a single visitor, the vastness of the ocean their only horizon. The world beyond was a distant memory, replaced by the cyclical rhythm of light and dark, storm and calm. The mind, left to its own devices in such solitude, often drifts to places unseen and unheard. Thoughts meander slowly, like the fog that curls softly around the rocky shores. For James, Thomas and Donald, the companionship they found in each other was a lifeline, a quiet tether to sanity and comfort amid the endless grey. Their letters to loved ones, sent during rare visits from supply ships, reveal a profound bond with the sea and the land. James wrote of the beauty found in small moments, a dawn's first light, the delicate pattern of frost on window panes, the distant song of a lone bird. Thomas shared sketches capturing the interplay of shadow and water, while Donald's few words spoke volumes in their steadiness and calm. Yet beneath these peaceful exteriors, the vast isolation could weigh heavily. The ever-present storm clouds, the howling wind that seemed to carry voices from far beyond, and the creeping mist that swallowed the landscape all contributed to a sense of timelessness, and, some might say, the uncanny. The keeper's logs hint at occasional moments of unease, entries noting strange noises carried on the wind, unexplained flickers of light beyond the lighthouse, and a pervasive feeling of being watched by something unseen. But such observations were recorded matter-of-factly, without alarm, as if acknowledging these phenomena was simply part of life on the Isles. The night before their disappearance, the sky was particularly clear, stars glittering like distant lanterns across the ink-black heavens. The sea below was calm, its surface reflecting the starlight in shimmering ripples. It was a night that seemed to hold its breath, a moment suspended between the known and the unknown. As dawn approached, the mist began to creep back in, wrapping the island in a soft white embrace. And when the relief crew arrived days later, that same mist had settled like a veil over the unanswered questions, hiding the fate of James, Thomas, and Donald in its quiet depths. Imagine now the soft touch of the mist against your skin, the faint scent of salt and earth mingling in the cool air. The distant call of seabirds blends with the gentle rhythm of waves, a lullaby from the sea itself, carrying the whispers of a mystery that endures beyond time. Lighthouse keeping has long been a solitary profession, steeped in tradition and shaped by the relentless forces of nature. Across the centuries, men and women have stood watch from isolated towers, their lives marked by unwavering dedication and quiet resilience. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse was no exception, its history woven into the fabric of maritime safety along Scotland's rugged western coast. Before the modern lighthouse stood, these islands were known to fishermen and sailors as treacherous waters, where hidden reefs and fierce storms claimed many vessels. The need for a guiding light was urgent, a beacon of hope in a world where darkness and danger were often one and the same. The lighthouse was constructed in the late 19th century, a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. Its white walls, stark against the grey rock, were a promise of safe passage, a sentinel standing guard over the turbulent seas. Local folklore, passed down through generations, speaks of the Isles as a place touched by the supernatural, a realm where the boundary between the living and the unseen is thin. Stories tell of mysterious lights dancing over the waves, voices carried on the wind, and shadows that move just beyond the edge of sight. These tales, while whispered with reverence, were never spoken of as threats, but rather as part of the island's essence, a reminder of the vastness and mystery of the natural world. The Flannan Isles were also home to seabird colonies, whose cries filled the air with a haunting melody. The birds were seen as guardians of the islands, their presence a constant amid the shifting tides and weather. For the keepers, the interplay of these elements, the sea, the sky, the land, and the stories, created a unique tapestry of life. It was a world where solitude and connection coexisted, where the ordinary and the extraordinary blended seamlessly. As the years have passed, the mystery of the vanished keepers has inspired countless reflections on human vulnerability and the enduring power of nature. It stands as a quiet monument to those who have faced the unknown with courage and calm. Picture now the soft flutter of seabird wings overhead, the gentle crash of waves below, and the whisper of ancient stories carried on the breeze, a soothing symphony from the edges of the world. The mystery of the Flannan Isles' disappearance has long invited speculation, yet no definitive answers have ever emerged. Theories abound, each weaving its own quiet narrative into the fabric of this enduring enigma. Some suggest that the storm of December 14th, fierce and unrelenting, played a pivotal role. It's conceivable that a rogue wave, a sudden giant swell born of the tempest's fury, swept one or more of the men from the cliffs. The island's jagged edges and slippery rocks could have been merciless under such conditions, turning a routine check into a fatal misstep. Yet the absence of footprints or evidence on the rocky shore casts doubt on this theory. If the men had ventured outside during the storm, there should have been signs. Disturbed vegetation, marks in the sand, or remnants of their presence. The complete lack of such traces suggests something more mysterious at work. Others have considered the psychological toll of isolation. Lighthouse keepers often battled loneliness and monotony, their minds wandering through long hours of solitude. Could the weight of seclusion have driven the men to leave the lighthouse, perhaps wandering into the mist in search of solace or escape? Historical records show that keepers frequently faced such challenges, using books, letters, and communal routines to maintain mental well-being. James, Thomas, and Donald seemed no different, their logbooks reflecting steady minds and conscientious care. Then there are the more enigmatic possibilities: the strange lights reported by passing ships, the eerie sounds carried by the wind, and the pervasive feeling of an unseen presence noted in the logs. Some whisper of forces beyond human understanding, subtle energies of the sea and sky that defy explanation. Whatever the truth, it remains locked within the silent stone walls of the lighthouse and the ever-changing moods of the Atlantic. Life in the lighthouse, however, was not solely defined by isolation or mystery. The daily routines of the keepers were a rhythm of care and vigilance, a dance between man and nature. Morning light would spill gently over the rocky landscape, illuminating the narrow staircase winding upward to the lamp room. The men would begin their day with tending to the lamp's mechanism, a precise task requiring steady hands and focused attention. They cleaned lenses with soft cloths, trimmed wicks, and refilled oil reservoirs, ensuring the light would shine brightly through the darkest nights. The glow was a lifeline for sailors, a beacon cutting through fog and storm. Between these duties, the keepers maintained the building and grounds. They repaired weather-beaten walls, swept the floors, and stocked provisions. The smell of salt and wood smoke mingled with the crisp sea air, filling the lighthouse with a sense of homely comfort despite its stark setting. Meals were simple yet hearty: fresh bread, salted meat, and whatever supplies the supply boat had brought. Evenings were spent sharing stories, reading aloud, or sketching scenes from the island's ever-changing vistas. Through it all, the men remained attuned to the natural world around them, the shifting tides, the flight of seabirds, the rise and fall of weather. As you imagine the quiet glow of the lighthouse lamp piercing the dark Atlantic night, and the steady, patient hands keeping the light alive, let your thoughts drift gently on the ocean breeze, calm and unhurried. When news of the disappearance reached the mainland, concern quickly turned to action. The authorities organized a relief expedition to the Flannan Isles, carrying with them supplies and a determination to uncover the fate of the missing keepers. The relief crew approached the islands cautiously, the waters below churning softly under a leaden sky. As their boat neared the rocky shores, the lighthouse stood silent, its light extinguished, a rare and unsettling sight against the dusk. Upon entering the lighthouse, the relief crew found the scene frozen in time. Meals remained untouched on the table. Personal belongings lay scattered as if the men had simply stepped out for a moment, yet never returned. The logbook, a detailed record of weather and duties, ended abruptly with no indication of distress. Outside, the landscape was stark and windswept. Searchers combed the jagged cliffs and shoreline, scanning every crevice and outcrop for signs of the missing men. Despite thorough efforts, no footprints, tools or clues were discovered to suggest what had happened. Locals and maritime experts pondered the mystery, considering every possibility. Some posited that a sudden and violent sea surge had swept the men away, while others suspected foul play or a tragic accident hidden by the merciless terrain. The investigation also noted peculiar details: the severed telegraph wires leading to the lighthouse, as if communication had been deliberately cut. This raised questions about whether the men had foreseen danger and attempted to signal for help or prevent others from reaching them. Despite the absence of definitive evidence, the search left a lingering impression on all involved. The Flannan Isles remained a place where nature's power and mystery converged, a landscape that could both sustain and consume. Over the years, the story of the vanished keepers became part of local lore, a tale shared quietly among fishing communities and passed down through generations. The lighthouse itself was rebuilt and continues to shine, a steadfast guardian over the restless sea. As you imagine, the searchers' slow, deliberate steps along the rocky cliffs and the whispered conversations carried on the wind, allow yourself to sink deeper into the tranquil mystery, a reminder of nature's vastness and the quiet bravery of those who live at its edge. The legacy of the Flannan Isles keepers lives on, not only in the stone walls of the lighthouse or in the pages of maritime records, but in the quiet reverence of those who understand the solitude and sacrifice inherent in their calling. Lighthouse keeping was a profession defined by steadfastness and resilience. It required a spirit attuned to the rhythms of the sea, a patience cultivated through countless hours of watchful waiting, and a dedication to service that transcended personal comfort. James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur embodied these qualities. Though their lives were cut short by mystery, their devotion illuminated not only the dark waters around the Isles, but also the hearts of those who hear their story. Over time, the Flannan Isles have become a symbol, a place where human endurance meets the vast and often indifferent forces of nature. The lighthouse continues its silent vigil, its beam cutting through fog and storm, a beacon of safety and hope. For those who listen closely, the whispers of the past can still be heard in the wind, carrying echoes of footsteps long vanished and the soft murmur of voices lost to the sea. These stories invite us to reflect on the nature of solitude and connection, on the courage required to stand guard where the world seems at its most remote and mysterious. As the night deepens and the ocean's gentle song lulls you closer to rest, remember the keepers of the Flannan Isles, not just as figures in a tale of disappearance, but as enduring symbols of quiet strength and unyielding light. Imagine now the lighthouse's steady beam sweeping slowly over dark waters, the cold sea air wrapped around you like a gentle cloak, and the soft call of distant seabirds blending with the rhythmic pulse of the waves. Allow this peaceful scene to carry you into a deep and restful sleep. Shadows of Truth. True horror story number 2, the Dyatlov Pass incident. In the remote and vast expanse of the Ural Mountains, where the wind whispers through towering pines and ancient snowfields stretch endlessly beneath pale skies, there lies a trail shrouded in mystery and quiet unease. It is here, in the bitter cold of the winter of 1959, that a group of 9 experienced hikers set out on a journey that would become one of the most perplexing and haunting mysteries of the modern age. The Dyatlov Pass, named after the group's leader Igor Dyatlov, was to be a routine trek, a challenge to test their endurance and skills amid the rugged terrain. The hikers were well prepared, their spirits high as they navigated through dense forests and icy slopes, bound together by friendship and shared adventure. But as the days grew shorter and the biting cold deepened, something unseen and inexplicable began to unravel the fabric of their expedition. Tonight, we will journey slowly into the silent wilderness, feeling the crunch of snow beneath boots, the sharp scent of pine in the cold air, and the hush of the forest under a star-studded sky. We will gently explore the unfolding of events, marked by subtle clues, eerie silences, and a landscape that holds its secrets close. As you settle in, allow the soft murmur of the wind and the quiet crackle of a campfire to soothe your mind, guiding you into this story of mystery and quiet reflection. The group of 9 hikers had been carefully chosen, each one experienced in navigating the harsh Russian wilderness. Igor Dyatlov, their leader, was a determined young man with a quiet confidence and deep respect for nature. Alongside him were skilled companions, students, engineers, and outdoor enthusiasts, each with their own stories and dreams. They set out in late January, the landscape around them a vast expanse of snow and shadow. The air was crisp and biting, every breath visible as a soft mist that quickly faded into the cold. The towering pines stood like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with frost, while distant mountains loomed, their peaks lost in swirling clouds. Days passed with routine rhythms, the setting up of tents, the warming of hands by crackling fires, the careful plotting of routes on frost-covered maps. The group's camaraderie was warm, laughter and shared stories blending with the quiet sounds of the wilderness. On the night of February 1st, the weather turned harsher. Winds howled through the trees, bending their limbs in a ghostly dance. Snow fell thick and fast, muffling footsteps and softening the landscape into a white dreamscape. Despite the storm, the hikers made camp on the slopes of Kholat-Syakhl, a mountain ominously named the Dead Mountain by the indigenous Mansi people. It was a site known for sudden weather changes and challenging terrain. That night, something unsettled stirred in the silent wilderness. When rescuers arrived weeks later, they found the group's tent, its fabric torn and slashed from within, pitched awkwardly on the snow. Footprints led away into the dark forest, some shoeless and in socks, disappearing into the cold night. What followed was a grim discovery, the bodies of the hikers, scattered and found under strange and troubling circumstances. Some showed signs of trauma, others appeared frozen in time, their expressions frozen in a mix of fear and confusion. Yet there was no clear explanation, no footprints of other people, no signs of wildlife attack, no clues to the mysterious forces that had caused the hikers to flee their tent in the dead of night, ill-prepared for the brutal cold. Theories emerged: avalanches, military tests, secret experiments, and even supernatural forces. But none fully accounted for the strange injuries, the missing clothing, or the inexplicable patterns of the hikers' final moments. Imagine now the whispering wind weaving through the pines, the soft crunch of snow underfoot, and the deep silence of the forest holding its secrets. The mystery of Dyatlov Pass invites gentle reflection on the fragility of human life in the face of nature's vast and sometimes unknowable power. The investigation into the Dyatlov Pass incident began as soon as the search parties reached the remote site. The icy wilderness stretched endlessly around them, silent except for the crunch of snow beneath their boots and the occasional gust of wind whispering through the trees. The tent stood torn open, its orange fabric fluttering weakly in the cold breeze. The cut in the canvas was peculiar. It seemed as though the occupants had fled in haste, cutting their way out from the inside rather than using the tent's entrance. This small detail hinted at urgency and fear, though the cause remained elusive. Footprints led from the tent into the surrounding forest, some barefoot or in socks, others in shoes, winding unevenly through the snow before disappearing altogether. The cold was unforgiving, and the hikers' exposure without proper clothing suggested a dire situation. The bodies were found in stages over the following weeks. Some lay near the forest's edge, others further into the dense woods, each discovery revealing new and troubling details. The arrangement of the bodies, their injuries, and the state of their clothing defied easy explanation. Several had suffered blunt force trauma, broken ribs, skull fractures, but the skin showed no external wounds, as if struck by an immense internal force. Others were found with severe internal injuries that baffled medical examiners. One body was missing its tongue and eyes, though there was no sign of animal predation. The temperatures were bone-chilling, dropping well below freezing. Hypothermia was a likely factor, yet the circumstances were unusual. Some victims were dressed inadequately for the cold, having shed their outer layers, while others were found fully clothed but unable to protect themselves. Theories about what had caused such strange injuries ranged from natural phenomena to human interference. Some suggested a sudden avalanche, which could have forced the hikers to flee the tent rapidly, but the terrain showed no clear signs of such an event. Others speculated about secret military tests or weapon experiments in the area, which could explain the mysterious injuries, but no evidence was ever substantiated. Folklore and local legends whispered of mountain spirits and unseen forces, a subtle unease woven into the landscape, though such stories were often viewed with skepticism. Throughout the investigation, one thing remained clear. The hikers faced something so unexpected and overwhelming that it shattered their sense of safety and forced them into the cold wilderness, where their lives ultimately came to a tragic end. Picture the snow falling softly through the dense branches, the muted sound of the wind, and the quiet stillness that blankets the forest. The mystery lingers here, not in loud revelations, but in the calm and eerie silence of the mountains themselves. Each member of the Dyatlov group was more than just a name in a report. They were young individuals with dreams, ambitions, and lives woven into the fabric of mid-20th century Soviet society. Understanding who they were helps us gently connect with the human side of this quiet tragedy. Igor Dyatlov, the expedition leader, was a 23-year-old engineering student with a passion for the outdoors. Known for his calm demeanor and thoughtful leadership, Igor was respected by his peers and admired for his determination to explore the wild landscapes of the Urals. Zinaida Kolmogorova, one of the two women in the group, was an experienced hiker with a love for nature's beauty and the serenity of the mountains. Her notebooks reveal poetic reflections on the landscape's vastness and the peaceful solitude found in the snow-covered forests. Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko were engineers and avid outdoorsmen, their technical minds balanced by a deep appreciation for the natural world. They shared quiet moments of camaraderie around the campfire, their laughter mingling with the crackle of flames. Lyudmila Dubinina, the other woman, was known for her gentle spirit and resilience, qualities that endeared her to the group. Her sketches and diary entries speak of a thoughtful soul attuned to the rhythms of nature. The other members, Alexander Kolotov, Rustem Slobodin, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, and Semyon Zolotaryov, each brought their unique strengths and personalities to the team, forming a bond forged in mutual respect and shared adventure. The news of their disappearance sent ripples through families and communities, sparking grief and unanswered questions. Parents and friends held on to hope even as the harsh reality of the search unfolded. The mystery of what had befallen them in the vast, unforgiving wilderness became a story shared in hushed tones, a solemn reminder of life's fragility. Over the decades, the Dyatlov Pass incident has inspired countless investigations, documentaries, and discussions. It remains a poignant narrative of human courage, vulnerability, and the silent power of nature. As the wind gently stirs the trees and the soft glow of moonlight filters through the branches, imagine the faces of these young adventurers, their spirits intertwined with the mountains they loved. Let their story settle softly into your mind, a quiet reflection on the mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding. The year was 1959, deep within the heart of the Soviet Union, a time marked by rapid change and lingering shadows of war. The country was emerging into a new era, yet the rugged landscapes of the Ural Mountains remained timeless, remote and largely untouched by the swirl of political events. For the young hikers, their expedition was more than a challenge of endurance. It was a moment of escape, a chance to breathe the pure, crisp air of the wilderness, far from the bustle of cities and ideological struggles. The mountains offered a sanctuary, a space where the pressures of everyday life softened beneath the vast, silent skies. In this context, the mystery of Dyatlov Pass took on layers of meaning. It was not just a tragic accident, but a reflection of humanity's delicate place amid nature's indifferent grandeur. Over the decades, investigators and enthusiasts have proposed many theories to explain the strange circumstances of the hiker's demise. One theory centers on the possibility of an avalanche, a sudden and silent force capable of driving the hikers from their tent in panic. While the terrain did not show typical avalanche signs, the unpredictability of mountain snow could have created conditions that compelled such flight. Others suggest the involvement of infrasound, low-frequency sound waves generated by wind over the mountain ridges. These waves can induce feelings of anxiety and panic in humans, possibly explaining the hikers' sudden, disoriented escape. More speculative ideas touch on secret military tests or experimental weapons, given the proximity to restricted areas, though no concrete evidence supports these claims. Natural hazards like hypothermia remain central to understanding the tragedy. The cold can warp perception and decision-making, pushing even the strongest to desperate measures. Despite these theories, the core mystery endures, wrapped in the silent snowfall and the unchanging mountains. Picture the soft settling of fresh snow, the quiet hush that falls over the forest after a storm, and the endless sky stretching overhead. The story of the Dyatlov Pass hikers is a gentle reminder of nature's majesty and the fragile thread that binds us to this world. As we draw this story to a close, imagine the quiet stillness of the Ural wilderness, the gentle sway of snow-laden branches, the faint trace of footsteps long vanished, and the soft glow of a distant campfire flickering against the night. The mystery of the Dyatlov Pass remains, not as a tale of terror, but as a quiet meditation on the unpredictable dance between human courage and the vast, untamed forces of nature. It is a story that invites us to pause, to listen deeply to the whispers of the wind and the silence of the mountains. Though the fate of Igor Dyatlov and his companions is shrouded in uncertainty, their journey reminds us of the beauty and fragility of life, a delicate balance held within the cold embrace of winter and the warmth of shared human connection. Let this story gently ease your mind, carrying you into peaceful rest as the wild landscapes of the Urals fade softly into dreams. Shadows of Truth, True Horror Story number 3. The silent village of Gwillian's Hollow, nestled deep within the rolling hills of rural Wales, lies a place forgotten by time, a village whispered about in hushed tones, known as Gwillian's Hollow. Its name, borrowed from the ancient Welsh word for ghosts or spirits, carries a weight of mystery and quiet unease that lingers like morning mist over the emerald valleys. Gwillian's Hollow was once a thriving community, where generations lived in harmony with the land. Stone cottages with moss-covered roofs lined narrow lanes, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming heather and the soft murmur of the nearby stream. Yet, beneath this pastoral beauty lay a history marked by strange disappearances and eerie silence that seemed to swallow the village whole. Tonight, we will walk slowly through this forgotten place, feeling the cool breath of the hills, hearing the rustle of leaves and the distant call of an owl. We will explore the quiet stories woven into the fabric of the village, stories of vanished neighbors, lingering shadows, and the subtle chill of something not quite seen but deeply felt. As you settle in, allow the gentle sounds of wind through the trees and the soft patter of rain on ancient stone to soothe your mind, guiding you into this tale of mystery and calm reflection. Gwillian's Hollow had always been a place where the seasons marked time in gentle rhythms, the blossoming of wildflowers in spring, the golden hues of autumn leaves, and the soft hush of snow blanketing the hills in winter. Life here was slow and measured, each day unfolding with familiar patterns that tied the villagers to the land. Among the residents was a small, tight-knit community, bound by shared history and quiet routines. The village blacksmith, a man named Ewan, was known for his steady hands and warm smile. His forge glowed softly at dusk, casting dancing shadows on the cobblestones as he worked. Near the chapel lived Mare, an elderly woman whose knowledge of local lore was as deep as the roots of the ancient oaks surrounding the village. Yet, beneath the surface of daily life, a subtle tension lingered. For decades, whispers spoke of neighbours who vanished without trace, homes left empty, and windows darkened, as if the very soul of the village was slowly fading. The disappearances were never sudden or violent. There were no signs of struggle or forced entry. Instead, people simply seemed to fade away, leaving behind belongings neatly arranged and meals left uneaten. The village grew quieter with each passing year, the air thick with unspoken questions. One autumn evening, as twilight settled over the hills, a traveller arrived, a historian named Rhys, drawn by tales of Gwylion's Hollow and the mysteries cloaking its past. His footsteps echoed softly along the narrow lane, the soft crunch of leaves beneath his boots blending with the distant call of a lone owl. Rhys was greeted warmly but with a cautious reserve, as if the village itself held its breath in his presence. He spent days speaking with the remaining residents, collecting stories and piecing together fragments of memory. Through his gentle inquiries, the pattern of disappearances began to emerge, not just as isolated events, but as threads woven into the very fabric of the village's history, stretching back centuries. Imagine the cool evening air brushing softly against your skin, the rustling leaves whispering secrets only the oldest trees remember, and the faint glow of lanterns casting gentle pools of light in the gathering dusk. Rhys found himself drawn deeper into the village's quiet enigma, each story unfolding like a soft echo from a distant past. The villagers spoke in hushed tones of the waiting, a phrase that seemed to carry both reverence and fear, yet no one spoke plainly of what it meant. One evening, seated by a small fire in the cosy hearth of the village inn, Rhys listened as Mare recounted an old tale passed down through generations. She spoke of the Gwylion, the restless spirits said to wander the hills and woods around the hollow. These spirits were neither malevolent nor kind, but existed in a liminal space, caught between worlds, their presence a reminder of nature's subtle balance. According to legend, the Gwylion were guardians of the land, but also harbingers of change. When the village was in harmony with the earth, their presence was barely felt, a whisper in the wind, a flicker of shadow beneath the trees. But when imbalance crept in, through neglect, greed, or sorrow, the Gwylion's watchful eyes turned more insistent, and those who disturbed the delicate balance could find themselves drawn into the mist, never to return. Rhys felt the weight of these stories settle softly around him, like the evening fog rolling gently over the hills. The disappearances, the silence, they were not just tragedies, but part of an ancient rhythm, a quiet dialogue between the village and the unseen world. With each conversation, Rhys pieced together glimpses of old rituals, forgotten customs meant to honor the land and maintain peace with the spirits. Over time, these practices had faded, and with their loss, the village had grown quieter, as if holding its breath. One morning, while walking near the edge of the forest, Rhys discovered a circle of weathered stones, half hidden beneath moss and ferns. It was a place of quiet power, where the air felt cooler and the sounds of the village seemed distant. Standing there, he understood that Gwylion's Hollow was a threshold, a place where the seen and unseen brushed gently against each other. Imagine the cool shade of ancient trees overhead, the soft rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze, and the faint scent of earth and moss filling the air. Here, in the hush of the forest, the story of Gwylion's Hollow invites you to listen closely, to feel the subtle pulse of a world just beyond sight. As days turned to weeks, Rhys found himself enveloped in the rhythms of Gwylion's Hollow. Mornings began with a soft light filtering through dew-kissed leaves, while evenings settled with a tranquil hush, broken only by the distant call of an owl or the faint ripple of the nearby stream. The villagers, initially reserved, gradually opened their hearts to Rhys, sharing quiet moments over warm tea and gentle conversation. Their stories were filled with layers of meaning, whispers of a life entwined with the land, memories passed from mother to child, and the silent understanding of forces that move just beyond human perception. Rhys learned of the old customs once practiced to honour the Gwyllion, small offerings left at the stone circle, songs sung softly at twilight, and the careful tending of the forest's edges. These rituals were acts of respect and balance, reminders that the village was a part of something larger and deeply interconnected. But with time, many of these practices had faded into memory, lost amid the march of modern life. The consequences of this quiet forgetting were etched in the village's stillness. The slow disappearance of neighbours, the empty homes, and the pervasive sense of waiting. One evening, as Rhys walked the narrow path beneath a canopy of stars, he felt a subtle shift in the air. The wind carried a soft murmur, as if the very earth was whispering ancient secrets. It was neither frightening nor urgent, but a gentle reminder that the story of Gwylion's Hollow was far from over. That night, back in his small room at the inn, Rhys dreamed of shadowy figures moving just beyond the edge of the firelight, silent guardians watching over the land, patient and eternal. He awoke with a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that to truly honour the village's legacy, he must help rekindle the delicate harmony between people and place. Imagine the cool night air brushing softly against your skin, the quiet rhythm of your breath mingling with the whispers of the forest and the steady heartbeat of the earth beneath your feet. In this stillness, the story of Gwylion's Hollow gently settles, inviting you to rest in its calm embrace. As Rhys settled into his routine, an air of cautious hope began to permeate the village. The villagers, inspired by his reverence for their history, started quietly reviving some of the old customs, leaving small tokens of gratitude at the stone circle, sharing stories once tucked away, and slowly repairing the bonds between people and place. But one mist-shrouded morning, just as the first pale light touched the hills, a strange discovery unsettled this fragile calm. Near the edge of the forest, not far from the ancient stone circle, Rhys found a narrow path he had never noticed before, a faint trail leading into a dense thicket, hidden beneath tangled brambles and shadowed by towering oaks. Curiosity stirred gently within him, and with careful steps, Rhys followed the path deeper into the woods. The air grew cooler, the light dimmer, until he emerged into a small clearing. At its centre stood a weathered wooden door, framed by ancient stonework partially swallowed by ivy and moss, a door with no walls, no building, just an entrance suspended in the quiet forest. Rhys reached out, his fingers brushing the rough wood, feeling the pulse of something both old and alive beneath the surface. The door was locked, yet seemed to hum softly, as if waiting. As he stood there, a sudden breeze whispered through the clearing, carrying with it a faint melody, notes of a lullaby, half-remembered and hauntingly beautiful. For a moment, Rhys felt a stirring within himself, a gentle pull toward the unknown, a beckoning that transcended fear or doubt. The villagers' whispered warnings echoed in his mind, tales of those who had ventured too far into the woods and were never seen again. But beneath the caution lay a truth unspoken, that the door was a threshold, not just between places, but between worlds. Imagine the soft rustle of leaves in a quiet forest, the distant echo of a song carried on the wind, and the cool brush of mist against your skin. Here, in this hidden clearing, the story of Gwylion's Hollow takes a subtle, unexpected turn, inviting you to step gently through the unknown. Rhys stood before the ancient door, the soft melody lingering in the air like a distant memory. His hand rested lightly on the weathered wood, sensing the quiet hum beneath his fingertips, a pulse not unlike the steady rhythm of a calm heartbeat. Gathering his breath, he gently pushed, expecting resistance. To his surprise, the door creaked open, revealing a narrow passage cloaked in shadows and the faint scent of earth and old wood. Stepping through, Rhys felt the air shift, cool and still, yet alive with a subtle energy that seemed to wrap around him like a gentle embrace. The passage led downward, winding slowly into the heart of the earth beneath Gwylion's hollow. Soft, diffused light glowed from unseen sources, illuminating walls etched with delicate carvings, symbols of trees, stars, and flowing water, reminders of the village's deep connection to the natural world. At the passage's end, Rhys entered a cavernous chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. The air here was thick with quiet reverence, as if the space itself was a sanctuary, untouched by time. In the centre stood a stone altar, smooth and worn, surrounded by small offerings, fresh wildflowers, polished river stones, and delicate feathers. A faint warmth radiated from the altar, a quiet heartbeat echoing the pulse Rhys had felt at the door. Kneeling beside the altar, Rhys felt a profound sense of peace, a connection to the generations who had come before, honouring the land and the unseen spirits that watched over it. Yet, amid this calm, a subtle unease lingered, a reminder that the door was a threshold, a gateway between the familiar and the unknown. As Rhys rose to leave, the soft melody returned, weaving through the chamber like a gentle breeze. It was a lullaby for the village, a song of remembrance and hope, echoing through the stillness. Imagine the cool earth beneath your feet, the quiet glow of ancient light surrounding you, and the soothing song that carries you gently onward, deeper into the story of Gwylion's Hollow, where mystery and peace entwine. Rhys lingered in the chamber, his fingertips tracing the worn symbols etched into the stone walls. Each carving seemed to pulse softly, as if alive with the memories of those who had once tended this sacred place. The air was thick with a quiet reverence, a tangible sense of connection spanning generations. As he explored, Rhys noticed a small, weathered journal tucked beneath a cluster of smooth river stones on the altar. The leather cover was cracked but intact, its pages yellowed with age. Opening it carefully, he found the delicate script of a village elder, chronicling rituals, hopes, and warnings passed down through time. The journal spoke of a delicate balance between the village and the spirits of the land, between the seen and unseen. It described ceremonies held at the stone circle and the chamber, meant to honour the Gwyllion and keep the village safe from their restless watch. But there was also a warning. If the balance was disturbed, the spirits might grow restless, and the village could slip into silence once more. Rhys closed the journal with a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. He understood now that his role was more than that of a historian. He was a guardian of stories, a bridge between past and present. Returning to the village, Rhys shared his findings quietly with the elders. Together, they renewed the ancient rituals, rekindling the delicate harmony that had once flourished. Over time, Gwylion's Hollow began to stir anew, the air lighter, the shadows less dense, and the village's silence gently broken by the return of laughter and life. And yet, beneath the surface, the memory of the mysterious door and the chamber remained, a subtle reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be fully unveiled, but embraced in their quiet, eternal presence. Imagine the soft glow of dawn filtering through the trees, the gentle murmur of a waking village, and the peaceful rhythm of stories carried forward with care and reverence. Shadows of Truth. True horror story number 4, The Vanishing of the Sodder Children. In the gentle hills of Fayetteville, West Virginia, nestled among soft woods and winding roads, there once stood a modest family home filled with warmth, laughter, and the promise of everyday life. The Sodder family, like many others in post-war America, found joy in simple moments, shared meals, holiday traditions, and the hopeful promise of a bright future. But one cold Christmas Eve in 1945, the comforting glow of the Sodder household was shattered by a fire that consumed their home and left more questions than answers. Tonight, we will move slowly into the quiet streets of Fayetteville, feeling the chill of a winter night and the soft crackle of embers carried by the wind. We will gently unfold the story of the Sodder children, 5 who vanished without a trace amidst the smoke and shadows, and the enduring mystery that has whispered through the decades. As you settle into this calm, reflective journey, allow the soft rustling of winter leaves and the distant call of an owl to ease your mind, guiding you gently into the story's heart. The Sodder family's home sat quietly on the edge of town, its windows glowing warmly against the cold December night. George and Jenny Sodder had 10 children, their bustling household a lively place filled with the noises of childhood, soft footsteps, whispered secrets, and the occasional burst of laughter. On Christmas Eve, the family gathered in the living room, the scent of pine from their freshly cut tree mingling with the sweet aroma of cinnamon and cloves. The children's eyes sparkled with excitement, the joy of the holiday season wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. As night deepened, a quiet unease settled over the household. A faulty electrical wire, perhaps, or a forgotten candle, the source of the sudden blaze that ignited before anyone could react. Flames licked hungrily at the walls, smoke curling upward in thick, dark ribbons that soon swallowed the house in an all-consuming haze. George and Jenny, along with some of their children, managed to escape the inferno, their breaths visible in the freezing air as they watched in horror. But 5 of their children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty Jane, were never seen again. The fire left behind only ashes and silence, but no bodies were ever found. The charred remains of the house raised more questions than answers, and whispers of strange lights in the sky and mysterious visitors added layers of intrigue to an already heartbreaking tragedy. Imagine the cold December air against your skin, the soft crackle of distant flames, and the hush of a night pierced by unanswered questions. The story of the Sodder children invites gentle reflection on loss, hope, and the enduring mysteries that quietly shape our lives. In the days and weeks following the fire, the Sodder family's grief was tempered by a resolute hope that their missing children might still be alive, somewhere beyond the ashes and smoke. George Sodder, a man of unwavering determination, refused to accept the finality of loss. He searched tirelessly, posting flyers with photographs of his children, visiting hospitals, orphanages, and jails, and appealing to anyone who might have seen a trace of them. The community around Fayetteville offered quiet support, their own hearts touched by the tragedy. Yet as time passed, the trail grew colder, and official investigations found no evidence of the children's remains in the ruins of the house. Adding to the mystery were reports of strange occurrences in the days after the fire. Lights were seen in the night sky, unexplained glows and flickers hovering above the charred homestead. A car was spotted idling near the house just before the blaze, its driver vanishing without a trace. Years later, a series of unsettling phone calls would reach the Sodders, voices on the other end whispering cryptic messages, and a man claiming to have seen one of the children alive in a distant city. The family's search extended beyond the borders of West Virginia, their story capturing the attention of those fascinated by unsolved mysteries. Yet, despite decades of searching, the fate of the 5 Sodder children remained an enigma, wrapped in smoke and silence. Imagine the gentle hum of a winter wind through bare branches, the faint glow of street lamps casting long shadows, and the quiet strength of a family clinging to hope amidst uncertainty. The Sodder story gently invites you to ponder the unknown paths that sometimes lie just beyond the reach of light. As the years unfolded, George and Jenny Sodder continued their quiet vigil, their lives shaped irrevocably by the absence of their 5 children. Their home, once filled with laughter and warmth, became a sanctuary of memories and unanswered questions. Despite the passage of time, their resolve never waned. The family placed a large billboard along a busy highway near their home. Its simple message read, 5 children lost in fire, last seen December 24, 1945. The photographs of the missing children smiled out, frozen forever in time, a poignant reminder to all who passed. The billboard became a symbol of hope and mystery, drawing visitors and those intrigued by the unexplained. Some came to offer solace, others to seek answers of their own. Public fascination grew as the story intertwined with reports of strange lights and mysterious figures. Speculations ranged from abductions by unknown forces to secret government plots, though none were ever proven. Over the decades, Jenny Sodder often spoke quietly of her dreams, visions where her children appeared, alive and well, calling to her from distant places. These dreams were a source of comfort and pain, weaving together the threads of hope and sorrow. In the broader tapestry of American history, the Sodder children's disappearance became a haunting narrative, one that lingered in the shadows of post-war optimism, a reminder of the fragility of family and the mysteries that sometimes slip through the cracks of everyday life. Picture now the soft glow of twilight settling over a quiet countryside, the slow dance of fireflies in the summer dusk, and the gentle rhythm of a heart holding on to hope against all odds. As we reach the close of this story, imagine the quiet stillness of the Fayetteville Hills at dusk, the soft rustle of leaves in the cold winter breeze, and the gentle flicker of distant stars emerging in the darkening sky. The tale of the Sodder children is not one of horror in the sharp, sudden sense, but a slow, lingering mystery, a quiet echo of love, loss, and hope that stretches across time. It is a reminder that sometimes the deepest fears are not of what we see, but of what remains unseen and unknown. Though the fate of Maurice, Martha, Louise, Jenny, and Betty Jane remains a mystery, their story invites us to hold space for unanswered questions, to embrace the gentle shadows where hope and sorrow intertwine. May this quiet reflection ease your mind, and as you drift toward rest, may you find peace in the soft embrace of the unknown. Imagine the calm night sky above you, the gentle rhythm of your breath, and the quiet comfort of stories that hold us close, even in their mysteries. Shadows of Truth. True horror story number 5, The Haunting of Villisca. In the quiet town of Villisca, Iowa, where gentle winds ripple through fields of corn and the sun casts long shadows over quiet streets, stands a house that holds memories darker than its peaceful exterior suggests. Built in 1912, the Villisca Axe Murder House has long been the site of one of America's most chilling, unsolved tragedies. On a summer night in 1912, a family of 6 and 2 young friends were found brutally murdered in their beds, the horrors of that night etched into the very walls of the house. Tonight, we will walk softly through the quiet streets of Villisca, feeling the warmth of a summer evening mingled with a subtle chill, as if the past still lingers just beneath the surface. We will explore the story of the Moore family and the mysterious tragedy that gripped the town, moving slowly through the echoes of sorrow and unanswered questions. As you settle into this calm journey, allow the soft rustling of leaves and the distant call of night birds to guide you gently into this tale of quiet horror and reflection. The Moore family home stood quietly on a corner lot, its white-painted walls and quaint porch belying the darkness that would soon engulf it. On the evening of June 10, 1912, Josiah and Sarah Moore prepared for bed with their 4 young children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, and 2 visiting girls, Lena and Ina Stillinger. The town of Villisca was small and close-knit, where neighbors knew each other's names, and the rhythm of life followed the gentle cadence of the seasons. That summer night, the air was heavy with humidity, the faint scent of blooming flowers mingling with the distant hum of cicadas. The family's routine was unremarkable, a simple life of work, school, and community, but beneath the surface, unknown to anyone, a tragedy was unfolding that would forever scar the town. In the early morning hours, neighbors awoke to a disturbing silence, the absence of the usual sounds of life unsettling in its stillness. When the family was found, the horrific scene left the town reeling. a brutal act of violence so stark it seemed to defy understanding. Yet despite the intense investigation that followed, the killer was never found. The house, left abandoned for years, became a place whispered about in quiet conversations, a shadow lingering over Villisca's sunny streets. Imagine the stillness of a summer night, the soft chorus of crickets, and the gentle sway of trees in a warm breeze. The story of the Villisca Axe murder house invites you to move slowly through its quiet corridors of memory, where sorrow and mystery intertwine. In the days that followed the tragedy, the town of Villisca became a place of hushed voices and cautious glances. The sorrow was palpable, wrapping the community in a gentle shroud of grief that seemed to linger in the warm summer air. The investigation was thorough, yet frustratingly inconclusive. Detectives combed through the house and the surrounding area, piecing together fragments of evidence with careful hands. The weapon, a large axe, still stained and left at the scene, became a silent witness to the horror. Suspects came and went, their lives quietly upended by suspicion, but none were ever definitively linked to the crime. The absence of clear answers left the town suspended in uncertainty, the shadows of that night stretching far beyond the walls of the Moore home. As the years passed, the house itself took on a new role, as a keeper of secrets and stories. Visitors and locals alike reported strange sensations, soft footsteps in empty rooms, fleeting glimpses of figures in the corners of their eyes, and whispers carried on the breeze. The house stood as a quiet monument to lives lost and questions unanswered, a place where history and mystery mingled in the fading light of each day. Imagine the slow settling of dusk over a quiet street, the soft flicker of a porch light, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. The Villisca Axe murder house invites you to listen closely to the stories that linger in its silent rooms, where the past breathes softly beneath the present. Over the decades, the Villisca Axe murder house has drawn countless visitors, curious travelers, paranormal investigators, and those drawn by the quiet weight of history. Many come seeking answers, while others simply wish to feel the lingering presence of lives forever changed. Visitors often speak of an almost tangible atmosphere, a stillness that settles deeply as if the walls themselves remember the sorrow etched into their beams. Some have reported gentle touches on their shoulders, faint whispers just beyond hearing, or the soft glow of unexplained lights flickering in the dark. Paranormal investigators have spent hours in the house's shadowed rooms, their equipment capturing faint sounds and temperature drops that defy easy explanation. Yet, through it all, the house remains calm, a silent sentinel holding its secrets close. In the town of Villisca, the house has become a part of local folklore, woven into stories told by grandparents around quiet fires. It is a reminder of the fragility of life, the shadows that can linger beneath even the brightest days. Despite the eerie legacy, the house also stands as a testament to resilience, a symbol of a community that remembers, honors, and quietly moves forward. Imagine now the soft glow of candlelight flickering in a quiet room, the distant murmur of a gentle breeze, and the comforting presence of stories that connect us across time and space. As we gently close the chapter on the story of the Villisca Axe murder house, picture the sun setting softly behind the rolling Iowa fields, casting long, peaceful shadows over the quiet town. The tale is one not just of tragedy, but of remembrance, a slow, tender weaving of memory and mystery that lingers in the hearts of those who know it. Though the truth of what happened on that summer night remains elusive, the story invites us to hold space for the past with compassion and quiet respect. May this reflection ease your mind as you drift toward rest, wrapped in the gentle embrace of stories that hold both sorrow and hope in their silent balance. Imagine the cool evening air brushing softly against your skin, the steady rhythm of your breath, and the quiet comfort of stories told with care and kindness, shadows of truth, True Horror Story number 6, The Whispering Pines of Pine Barrens. Deep within the dense forests of southern New Jersey lies the Pine Barrens, a vast stretch of whispering pines, winding rivers, and forgotten trails. It is a place where nature's quiet reigns supreme, and the slow rhythms of the forest have held steady for centuries. For generations, locals have shared tales of strange lights flickering between the trees, of voices carried on the wind, and of a lingering presence that watches silently from the shadows. Tonight we journey slowly into the heart of the Pine Barrens, feeling the cool brush of pine needles, the soft murmur of hidden creeks, and the gentle rustle of leaves beneath a twilight sky. Our story follows a small group of friends who ventured into these woods, drawn by curiosity and the promise of adventure. What they found, however, was a mystery far deeper than any had imagined, one that slowly revealed itself through subtle signs and quiet moments, before unfolding into an unexpected revelation. As you settle into this calming tale, allow the soft sounds of the forest and the whispering pines to guide you gently through a story where nature's beauty and quiet dread entwine. The group of friends, Emma, Lucas, Sarah, and David, had always shared a quiet bond, one rooted in a love of nature and the peaceful solace it provided. As autumn painted the forest in shades of amber and gold, they planned a weekend getaway to explore the Pine Barrens, seeking a respite from their busy lives. Their arrival was met with a gentle hush, the soft crunch of fallen leaves underfoot blending with the distant call of a barred owl. The air was crisp and tinged with the earthy scent of pine and damp moss. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the canopy thickened, filtering the fading sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor. The friends set up camp near a slow-moving creek, its waters whispering softly over smooth stones. Around the fire, their conversations were light, punctuated by laughter and the gentle crackle of flames. Yet, beneath the surface of their joy, a subtle current of anticipation flowed, an unspoken feeling that this place held stories waiting to be told. On the first night, as the stars began to peek through the dark velvet sky, Emma noticed something peculiar, a faint, flickering light moving just beyond the tree line. It was small and distant, almost like a firefly, but steadier, more deliberate. Curiosity stirred among the friends, and as the light danced between the trees, they decided to follow it, their steps soft and cautious. The light led them along a narrow path lined with ancient pines, their towering trunks standing like silent guardians. After a time, the light disappeared, leaving only the whispering of the pines and the steady rhythm of their own breathing. Though the night settled back into quiet, the memory of that elusive light lingered, a gentle thread weaving itself into the fabric of their experience. Imagine the cool night air, the scent of pine mingling with the crispness of autumn, and the soft rustle of leaves carried on a gentle breeze. This quiet moment invites you deeper into the unfolding story, where the ordinary and the mysterious gently intertwine. In the days that followed, the friends settled into the quiet rhythms of the Pine Barrens. Mornings greeted them with soft sunlight filtering through the canopy, the gentle hum of insects, and the distant call of birds waking to the new day. The forest was alive yet peaceful, a world apart from the rush of their everyday lives. Each afternoon they wandered the winding trails, discovering pockets of delicate wildflowers, ancient trees draped in moss, and the gentle flow of hidden streams. Their conversations grew softer, more reflective, as if the forest encouraged a slower, deeper connection, not just to the land, but to each other. But beneath this serene surface, small, almost imperceptible signs began to emerge, subtle shifts in the atmosphere that stirred a quiet unease. One evening, as twilight melted into night, Lucas noticed faint footprints in the soft earth near their campsite, prints too large and too deep to belong to any animal they knew. They were spaced in a way that suggested deliberate movement, But there was no other sign of passage, no broken branches or disturbed leaves. The friends examined the tracks with gentle curiosity, but before they could draw any conclusions, the forest seemed to close in around them. A soft, whispering wind rustled through the pines, carrying a sound almost like distant voices, too faint to understand, but unmistakably there. Sarah shivered, pulling her jacket tighter, yet the sensation was not one of fear, but of quiet alertness, a sense that the forest itself was communicating in its own mysterious way. Over the next days, these signs became more frequent. Glimpses of movement in the shadows just beyond sight, fleeting impressions of shapes among the trees, and a recurring feeling of being watched, but never threatened. The friends spoke little of these experiences, sharing only knowing glances and subtle nods, as if acknowledging a secret that needed no words. Imagine the soft murmur of the wind through pine needles, the cool earth beneath your feet, and the gentle cadence of breath, mingling with the quiet pulse of the forest. This stillness holds space for the unfolding mystery, slow, deep, and inviting. One evening, as the friends gathered quietly around the dying embers of their campfire, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The usual chorus of crickets and rustling leaves fell away, replaced by an almost tangible stillness that settled softly over the clearing. Emma, gazing into the darkened tree line, felt a pull toward a part of the forest they had not yet explored, a narrow path veiled in shadow and framed by ancient pines leaning inward, their branches entwined like silent sentinels. With quiet agreement, the friends rose, gathering their flashlights and moving as one toward the mysterious path. The beam of their lights pierced the darkness in slender shafts, illuminating the carpet of fallen needles and the occasional glint of spider silk. As they ventured deeper, the air grew cooler, carrying the subtle scent of damp earth and something else, something faintly metallic, yet oddly sweet. Suddenly, the path opened into a small clearing, bathed in the pale glow of moonlight. At its center stood a weathered stone structure, half sunken into the earth, its rough-hewn blocks covered with moss and delicate lichen. Intrigued, Lucas stepped closer, brushing away a curtain of ivy to reveal faded inscriptions etched into the stone. The markings were unfamiliar, ancient symbols that seemed to shimmer softly in the moonlight. As Emma traced a finger over the carvings, a chill ran through her, and the air seemed to hum with a gentle vibration, like the low murmur of 1,000 whispered voices. It was then that Sarah's voice broke the silence, calm but edged with awe. This isn't just a ruin, it's a doorway, not just through space but through time. The friends exchanged glances, the weight of her words settling between them. They had stepped into a place where the boundaries of reality softened, where past and present might intertwine in ways they had never imagined. And in that moment, the forest around them seemed to lean closer, the whispering pines bending to guard their secret. Imagine the cool brush of night air on your skin, the soft rustle of leaves stirred by a silent breeze, and the faint pulse of mystery that threads through the quiet woods. This is the turning point, where the story deepens and the unseen begins to reveal itself. As the friends stood silently before the ancient stone structure, a deep stillness settled over the clearing, a pause in the natural rhythm of the forest, as if time itself held its breath. Emma's fingers lingered on the carvings, tracing their weathered lines. The symbols were unlike anything she had seen before, intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story both cryptic and profound. Lucas stepped forward, shining his light carefully inside the hollowed space beneath the stones. Within, the air was cool and still, carrying a faint scent of aged wood and earth. As they peered inside, they found remnants of old tools, fragments of a craft long forgotten, and a faded journal, its pages fragile but intact. Sarah gently opened the journal, her voice soft as she read aloud, "We are the keepers, bound to the forest and its secrets. Through us flows the memory of the land, the whisper of pines and the breath of earth. Time bends here and the veil between worlds grows thin. The friends exchanged quiet glances, the weight of the words settling deeply. David, usually the skeptic, spoke with unusual reverence. It's like this place. It's a gateway, not just to the past, but to something beyond our usual understanding. As the moonlight bathed the clearing, the friends felt themselves slipping into a space where the familiar blended seamlessly with the mysterious. Memories surfaced, not just their own, but echoes of those who had come before, their stories entwined with the ancient forest. The journal revealed the existence of a lineage, the keepers of the pines, guardians who maintained the delicate balance between worlds. Their rituals, long forgotten, had kept the forest safe from restless shadows and wandering spirits. But the journal also spoke of a fracture, a disruption in the balance caused by forgotten trespassers, an event that echoed into the present, stirring the forest's quiet guardians. The friends realized their journey was no accident. They had been drawn here, chosen by the forest's unseen threads to help restore what had been lost. Imagine the soft pulse of ancient wisdom beneath your fingertips, the gentle hum of the earth's memory vibrating through the night air, and the slow unfolding of a story where past and present merge in peaceful harmony. With the weight of the journal's revelations settling gently upon them, the friends understood that their time in the Pine Barrens was more than a simple retreat. It was a calling, an invitation to step quietly into a story much older than themselves. Guided by the words of the keepers, they began to learn the subtle rituals meant to honor the forest's delicate balance. These were not grand ceremonies, but small, intentional acts, laying simple offerings of pine cones and wildflowers near the ancient stones, speaking softly to the wind and listening deeply to the whispers carried among the trees. As days passed, the forest seemed to respond. Shadows softened, the air grew lighter, and the faint, eerie sensations that had accompanied their arrival began to fade into a gentle peace. One evening, as they performed a ritual beneath the silver light of a full moon, the whispering pines around them seemed to sigh, releasing centuries of held breath. A faint glow pulsed from the stone structure, warming the clearing with a soft, amber light. In that quiet moment, the friends felt a profound connection, not just to the land, but to the generations of keepers who had come before them. They were part of a continuum, a thread woven into the tapestry of the forest's timeless story. Though the mystery of the Pine Barrens remained, it was no longer a source of unease, but a gentle reminder of the unseen forces that shape our world in quiet, tender ways. As they prepared to leave, the friends carried with them a newfound respect and a serene understanding that sometimes the greatest mysteries are those whispered softly by the world around us, inviting us to listen, to honor, and to find peace within the unknown. Imagine the soft rustle of pine needles in a night breeze, the gentle glow of moonlight filtering through the branches, and the comforting embrace of nature's quiet mysteries. As we gently draw this story to a close, picture the vast forest stretching out beneath the quiet night sky, endless waves of whispering pines swaying softly in the breeze, their secrets held close beneath the stars. The tale of the Pine Barrens is not one of sudden terror, but of subtle wonder, a slow, unfolding mystery woven into the very fabric of the earth and the trees. It reminds us that the world around us carries stories beyond what we see, stories whispered softly through time and space. May this quiet reflection ease your thoughts and calm your spirit, inviting you to rest within the gentle embrace of nature's timeless rhythm. As you close your eyes, imagine the soothing sounds of the forest night, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, and the steady, peaceful rhythm of your own breath. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with the serene whispers of the pines.